All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 4 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Let's go ahead and get started with our lesson for today. Today's lesson is arithmetic, and as I said to you on Monday night, this is easily, without a shadow of the doubt, the single most important quant lesson of the entire course. So please make sure you understand that, put in the time and effort needed, not only with the lesson, obviously, but with office hours after the fact, as well as homework, to make sure you cement this part of the quant curriculum. What you're going to start to find is that the math test on this portion of the exam is not one that's going to reward you for your ability to do brute force math. And we started to see that the other night. It's not about crunching those numbers with that crazy 6-digit square root problem. Hell no, that's not what this is about. But instead, the test is going to reward you for that reasoning, and thus your ability to start to identify patterns and properties, be able to understand them deeply, and connect dots across concepts. And as a result, that's something that you want to make sure you start to gear your studying towards. As I said on the first day, that first hour, if you understand what the test is measuring, that allows you then to succeed in your preparation. And so today we'll take a look at a few themes that the test maker uses to ruin your life. I started talking about the abstraction the other day. We saw some large and weird numbers, of course, because what's the most interesting thing about quant on this test is they managed to make math that you've always known look like stuff that you've never seen. And I think that's what you want to start to realize the GMAT is all about. Now, the game plan for today is pretty straightforward. We're going to start off with some real basic stuff, the arithmetic operations. I know a lot of us are going to say, what the hell are we going to spend some time doing that for? Because you'll realize that underlies everything we do from here on out. Probably spend the first hour talking that. Then we'll come into hour 2, take a look at the factors, multiples, and number line concepts. What you'll see is that these are some of the most important skills to have on the quant section of this test for sure. As the questions get more challenging, they come straight from that. And then we'll finish out the day with the other stuff. The other stuff is important, nowhere as important as the stuff at the top. So that means the number of properties, which we started to see a little bit of the other day with units, digits, get into the world of ratios, and finish out with some percents. So with that then, let's go ahead and jump right into the arithmetic calculations. As I said, these are the basics. Can you add? Can you subtract? Can you multiply? Can you divide? The answer to all of these should be yes, of course I can. But the GMAT can't ask you questions on that stuff. If everybody can do it, it would be a waste of their damn time. So you have to start to realize how they F you. And it's with questions such as this one. So notice what they've already done with this question from a quick glance. As I suggested to you the other day, they managed to pull out the numbers, because everyone can add and subtract with numbers, and they instead start to insert a bunch of symbols in the mix, hoping that some of you start to panic. Don't panic. Understand that this is not a math test, but a reasoning test, certainly not a symbology test. And thus, you just need to start to figure out what you know about basic addition and subtraction and start to relate it to this type of abstract question. But I love this question for a handful of reasons. I want to make sure you start to have the same appreciation. The first thing that I love about this question is notice that it's in subtraction format. That doesn't mean, though, you need to tackle it in a subtraction format. Because one thing that 99ers are really good at doing is being proactive rather than reactive. And that's a theme that I'm going to try to push in here for you to keep in mind. We don't answer the questions that they ask us often. We write the damn questions that we want to answer and tackle them that way for good cause. It becomes easier to do. Because I will tell you this much, tackling it from a subtraction-based perspective is going to be more challenging than if it were to be done in an addition way. And to me, an analogy of sorts is just driving your car. Do you want to drive in forward or do you want to drive in reverse? You can get to the same place both ways, but just what's going to be more efficient? And so to me, that's something that I want you to start to understand. You shouldn't be afraid to start to do. Remember, as we start to go through this journey, I said you got to learn to beat the timer to beat the test. But part and parcel of that is this notion that may be mind-blowing at first, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense the more you start to get into it. And it's really simple. It's just that you have to learn to slow down so that you can speed up. Like if I want to speed up right now, I could think that I'm doing it right by tackling it from a subtraction perspective, but I'd be dead wrong. So by slowing down, starting to take stock of what I got around me, which is first of all the fact that I know that this is just addition, I can do addition better than I can subtraction, will allow me then to speed up in the execution of the actual question. That's something you want to keep in mind. The second thing that I really love about this question is that if you notice, They're asking you for a diamond over here. Does that mean that's where you want to start this problem? Hell no. A lot of times the way these test questions are asked are phrased in ways to send you on a wild goose chase. And if you, again, slow down to speed up, you should start to see just from glancing at this problem over here that the diamond is actually going to be a bit of a pain to work with. After all, if you notice, this triangle hangs out all by its lonesome, and as a result, that means you could probably do some damage on the triangle first, which might help you get to the diamond second. And so even though that's where they want, and that's what they want, and that's where maybe you're led to believe that you should be starting, stop and think, is it really the best place for me? And don't be surprised if the answer to that is no, and then you've got to kind of think about it. All right, with that then, what I want to do is take a crack at this question. As I said to you the other day, I know everyone in here can add and subtract, but the fact that we can do it in this manner is what the test maker is looking to measure. So if half of us get this right, I'm going to be happy, which should tell you right off the bat, this is a challenging question to start. So you want to bring that respect. Now, if you're stuck on something like this, here's my advice. Obviously, I suggested being proactive rather than reactive, starting with the easiest piece of the puzzle first, which I would argue is the triangle. But also this notion of trying to figure out what potential values could be. If you start there thinking, hey, what could be the max, what could be the min on something like this, then I think you will carry yourself pretty far. So with that then, let me remind you how this is going to run. We're going to put a poll up. The poll, everybody should get into the poll. There's no excuse not to. I don't care if you say, oh, I didn't have enough time. Bullshit. Just guess if you have to. Secondly, the poll will open whenever the poll opens. Remember, it's not designed to be first in the poll wins. It's designed to be who's right in the poll that wins. So that's important. Take your time. Third, we're going to run a timer up here. As we're running the timer, and in general, nobody cares what you think about the damn question, what you think the answer to the question is, so on and so forth. The only thing you're basically encouraged to commit to in the main chat is whenever questions are asked of you, and I will always ask questions of you, so rest assured of that. But I just don't want people spoiling it for others. So with that, folks, let's go ahead and put 2 on the clock. Let's get this started. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Looking at the poll results right now, it seems like about 54% are getting this question right. So again, almost 100% in line with that prediction of, hey, if we get half getting this right, it's a good day. And that's not good though, if you take a step back and think about it. After all, this is just basic addition subtraction. How is it that half of us are getting it wrong right off the bat? That's something I want us to really be considering. Now, let's take a step back on this one. As I suggested to you, I would immediately look at this as an addition-based question, making your life more easy in the process. Meaning, if something minus something equals something, then you should be able to take that something, add it to that to get to that. And that's all we're looking to do here. Now, as I suggested to you, I do believe the triangle would be the easiest piece of the puzzle first. And one thing that you want to get in the habit of doing as you're trying to figure out values for potential variables or symbols is really just trying to think about limits or extremes. There was this great blog post. Again, I encourage you in my email welcoming you to the course to check out the GMAT tip of the week. There's not too many of them being produced anymore, but a quick search probably on Google, you know, with Brian Galvin writing them. But there was a great post there that was about the Biggie Smalls phenomenon of sorts, which is really just the idea there is just to think big, to think small in terms of numbers and where they can go. Are they going to go big? Are they going to go small? What are the potential values? So if we try to use that as a skill here, let me ask you this question. Ignore for a second that these are triangles. Just assume them to be a double-digit number there, just a random double-digit number. If I have 667 plus a double-digit number, what's the smallest this number could ever be there? Could that be like a 1? Could that be a 2? What do you guys think on that? Could that be a 3? How low can this ever go? 667 plus a double-digit number. What are your thoughts there? Yeah, be careful. If you guys are saying 6, you're 100% correct. If you're saying 7, you're kind of wrong. And again, I want you to think about this for a second. The idea there is if this is a double-digit number, such as, say, 10, I could end up at 677. And so the idea here is the smallest this could, in theory, get is absolutely a 6. Now, let's think about it on the extreme maximum side of things. So imagine this is a double-digit number. How big can this triangle ever get? Could that be like a 9? Could it be an 8? How large will that ever get? All right, good. So now we're in agreement. We're all zoning in on, hey, it can't ever be bigger than a 7. And you guys are absolutely right. Because again, the same mental exercise, you'd say, hey, if this was really a small double digit, it'd be 10. A really large double digit would pop it at 99 as an example. And then you'd be at 766. So of course, the biggest this triangle could ever be would be a 7. It can't ever get to an 8. Now that is from an addition perspective. Now if I want to do it from a subtraction perspective, I can still do the same thing. I could say, hey look man, if I have something minus something equaling 6 something, you know this number is at least 6 something. It can't be 500 something or 400 something. That's an impossible scenario. So thus you can reason it that way. Likewise on the upper limit, this can't be 900 something, subtracting out a double-digit number and ending up in the 6s. It's impossible. So as of right now, to figure out triangular values, whether it's subtraction or addition, basically the same thing. But it's the next stage where you're trying to figure out the actual diamond that things take a different turn. Meaning, from an addition-based perspective, way easier than a subtraction to figure out diamonds. So now, you know we started talking about units, digits on Monday, the last place. The idea is that if this were a triangle as a 6, I would pop it in here and I'd say 7 plus 6 equals a 13. If it were a 7, I'd say 7 plus 7 equals a 14. And it is at this moment as a 99er, my strategy kicks into high gear because I don't start continuing to do the math. I put my head down, I pray to the almighty GMAT gods, and I say, please hook a brother up with one answer that is either a 3 or a 4. And then I'm done with this. I don't need to figure out, is it 3 or is it 4? If you only give me one of them, I'm finished. The clown in the cubicle next to me is sitting there doing all the math, but I've moved past him because I realize it's just a reasoning test, and knowing that answers are assets is fundamental to the success for a 99er. And so I look at this and I'm like, sweet, 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 sweet. But then it's kind of like, damn you, you gave me both of them. But if this is not question 1, but instead question 31, and I know how to finish this question, I just don't got the time to do it, at least I'm guessing 50-50, folks. And you want to be doing whatever you can to increase those odds. Because remember, only the idiots guess 1 in 5. But of course, now we got to finish this out. But before we do, I want to go back and look at it from a subtraction perspective. Notice if all of a sudden I say, okay, well, what if this triangle were a 6? And I'm stuck here going, okay, I've got something minus a 6 getting me a 7, so is that like a 1? Because a 1 and a 6 is 7. But then it's like, no, a 1 and a 6 would actually get me to a 5 there if it's carrying and so on. So that's a shit way for me to go. So from an addition-based perspective, makes it really easy. Now, one thing that I'm going to try to get you guys to do is become super efficient with how you tackle your problems, how you use your scratch pad. And for me, what you're seeing on the screen is exactly what I'd be writing on my scratch pad. And the next step becomes so important not to rewrite, because not only is rereading going to kill you on this test, but so will rewriting. So if I know this is a 6 and a 3 or a 7 and a 4, all I got to do is just pop them in here. And I say, okay, here are some 6s. Does that work over here? No, that doesn't fly. Okay. I guess it's choice B is my final answer. And to me, what you start to find is that I don't need to prove that the 7s and 4s work, because I've already proved that the 6s and 3s don't. It's not like when I flip a coin and I have to decide is it heads or tails, and I find out it's not heads, that I go through a frickin', body cavity search to show that it's not tails then, right? I'm already able to figure it out just by being methodical in what it is that I do. And so, obviously I gave you 2 minutes to start on this question here. Does that mean that this should take 2 minutes? I don't know. It's obviously a more challenging question, but the one thing that hopefully you're starting to recognize is that there's not a lot of math necessary. It's just an understanding, and that's what the GMAT's all about, because again, we all know how to add and subtract, yet almost half of us miss this question, and it's because of little things like abstraction, but we have to manage to defang it as a trap so it doesn't burn us. Start to understand that, hey, that was just a simple number concept. Let me try to reason it out that way. All right, let's take this question next. I think this is a great question. Also, starting to hammer you home on that abstraction tip. Because again, notice how many variables are in the mix. All designed to F with your head. All designed to make you panic. The more letters I see, the more problems that I have. But it shouldn't be that way, especially if the letters don't even matter. So I want you to take a crack at this question. It's an easier question than the last one, but be careful. On this question, I do believe there is a great trap answer lurking. Remember when we started talking about Monday? Megan said, hey, they placed these answers there designed to tempt you. And remember, this test is constantly trying to weed people out. Not everyone can go to HBS. And as a result, they're trying to figure out, hey, which of you are the arrogant in here? Which of you are the lazy in here? Which of you don't want to really go to a good business school? Let's try to give you an answer waiting for you to pick it. So as you go through this question here, the one thing that I want you to be thinking about is, hey, pay attention to that sucker. If you can, we'll win. If not, we'll be in it. So with that, let's put a minute and a half on the clock. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Man, this is not so good. A decent number of you starting to walk into some serious sucker territory. So first off, hopefully you picked up on the fact that so many of these numbers did not matter. Completely moot. They were just there to F with you. In fact, if they weren't there, that would arguably have made it an easier question, even though it would be the same question, as many people may just simply have not panicked. Now, of course, once we get here, we know 9 times 9 is 81. We bring that up over there. So, question, because it looks like about 85% of you got to this point. At what answer choice do people start to pick right now because they want to be the sucker? They don't want to respect this question. They get this far, but they're looking to tap out, thinking they're entitled to a 760. They don't need to do shit to get it. What do you guys think on this one? Yeah. Be careful. It is indeed choice A. Don't double down on me, George. D 2 times ain't going to make it any better. Because let's start to realize how this operates. You look at this and you say, well, man, I know I got to go 8 plus B has to equal 0. So thus, this has got to be a 2. And it's like, well, I don't know. Does it? Is that the way long multiplication works? I know I said to you on Monday the long multiplication's for losers. That doesn't mean I shouldn't know how to do long multiplication. It just means that I just shouldn't do it. And so when I look at something like this, one thing, if I were so confident about what it is that I was doing, but I was the slightest bit unsure, all I would do is try to break it down using simpler numbers to see if I can figure it out. And that's a theme that I'm going to try to push in here that I like to call just dumbing things down. It's not because you're dumb that I'm encouraging you to do this. It's because I'm saying to you, hey, look, man, as a 99er, I dumb shit down all the damn time. And it's only so I can get it right that I do it. And the shame comes from not doing it and getting it wrong. And that's something you want to be thinking about. And so when you look at something like this, if hypothetically I were to say to you, hey, what's 9 times 19? I don't think anybody in here would say it's 91. I am fundamentally positive of that. Yet, so many people just did that on this question, almost a quarter of you. And to me, remember on day one I talked about those false negatives, telling the test maker you're dumber than you really are? That's what happens when you pick choice A, guys. And you have to have more respect than that. So when you look at something like this, what is it you were supposed to do? Obviously multiply those two together, then add that, and thus get to actually a 171 in the mix. And so when you see something like that, you say, okay, so I was pretty damn close there. This had to be that next step. So now let me figure this out. And again, if you start to say, damn, I was so close, of course you were. That's the point of the trap. They're trying to weed you out right before the finish line. Now, even here, if you get this far, you have to start to ask yourself, did I do it the right way? Not did I get it right. Who gives two shits if you got it right? This ain't a hard question. But did I do it the right way? Remember, answers are assets. If you sat here and said, oh, it's 9 times B, let me figure it out. Is it 9 times 0? Is it 9 times 1? 9 times 2? 9 times 3? You fail. You fail because you're not beating the timer to beat the test. Remember, if you know nothing else, you know even odd properties. If that's odd, that's even, you stop, you pray, give me one even number and I'm done with this question. And you're like, sweet, sweet, sweet. And you're like, damn you. There seem to be 3 even numbers in the mix. Okay, at least you're 1 and 3. And again, you just check them. Is 9 times 2 going to be a 2? No. 9 times 4? No. I think D, I know D is the right answer now. I don't even need to check it. And again, it's not hard to check, oh, 9 times 8 is 72, of course it's right. That's not what I care about, because this is stupid. What I care about is when the question gets tough, what do? You've eliminated 2 answer choices. Do you just roll in to try to prove the third? Why? It's a waste of time. Those are the takeaways that start to get scalable, folks. So that's the kind of stuff that I want you to be paying attention to. Now, if you notice in the poll here, 85% of you knew how to do this question. The other 15% I'm a little bit genuinely worried about. But if you notice, not everyone got it right. And it's because of just that. All right, with that then, I want to bring us to maybe our first tough question of the day. Addition, subtraction, fine, easy stuff. Multiplication, kicking it up a notch, okay. Division is where people start to crumble. Now, it's not even just regular old division. This is division on the next level. Wow, so they say, hey man, you know how to do division with long division style with remainders? Okay, sweet. Hey man, you know how to do division with decimals? Okay, sweet. Now, can you actually link the two? If you really understand division, I mean talking about true deep understanding, you should be able to get thrown right in the middle of a question of sorts and be able to take it all apart and be able to put it right all back together again. And that's a theme known as reverse engineering that you'll start to see over and over in these problems. And so as you're looking at a question like this, I wouldn't hate on you because you don't know the relationship. Shit, you may have crushed a skill builder and still not know this relationship, and that's okay. But remember what I said at the top of the pyramid is your ability to create at the top, sometimes creating new information out of old information that you have. You have all the information you need in that skill builder to crack the code on this question. What you may not know is a simple formula. Well, you can create the formula if you use a dumbed down example. So maybe pick some simple numbers, simple ones that help you figure out, hey, if I had a remainder, how would it relate to it if it were a decimal? And then be able to stick that landing. So with that then, I'll give you some time. Let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. Alright guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Decent performance on this question, hovering in around the 50s. And again, this is where perhaps some of us are getting a rude awakening into the world of the GMAT, and that's okay. Better it happened today than on test day X weeks from now. Now, let me ask you this to get this question moving. If any of you used numbers other than a 14, a 65, a 0.4, a 27, 35, 42, 45, just like, I'm talking about some simple numbers to figure out what the relationship here is with the remainder and decimals. What numbers did you use? I would be really interested to know. That, I think, is the first step to figuring this out. Because, by the way, if you know the relationship, this is a 30-second question. This ain't no 2-minute question. Shit, this ain't even tough. But it's very easy for it to become challenging if you don't even start trying to figure it out. I love, for me, you're going to quickly start to realize I suck at math. The bigger the number, the bigger the mistake. And so I love to pick numbers that are easy to work with, and 14.4, none of that looks easy to me, which is why I'm saying give me numbers other than that shit up here. I like Nix, Pradyumna is not bad, but I like Nix because it's even smaller. And so the one thing that I would say to you is, hell, let's go with the 11 and the 2 for right now, because no one's given me anything easier, although, damn. What I would strongly recommend you guys start to do is not complicate your life further. Think of numbers you can count on your hands. And so for me, if I look at a number like, say, 11 and 2, the reason this is a nice one is you can obviously set this up as a mixed fraction of sorts. You can set this up as a decimal component. And from a long division point of view, you should be able to, not that you want to, get to that point as well. Now, why is that important to start to see here? Well, notice on this one, it's imperative to start to connect dots. Like, you know where the quotient is on this. You got the 5, you got the 5, you got the 5. That's the easy stuff. The real question is, what about the decimal part? Well, the half and the 0.5, that should seem, at least in this example, pretty intuitive. The only question is, where are they getting these 1s and 2s? Well, that's what I think starts to become really interesting, because if you notice, that 1 comes from there, this 2 comes from there, and next thing you know, by simply figuring out where all these numbers are coming from with just any example you want. I'm using 11 over 2 because it's relatively small, not involving zeros, not involving odd numbers or different numbers, I should say. I can now figure out that this 1 is nothing more than the remainder. This 2 is nothing more than the divisor. And this 0.5 is simply the decimal. And that's a formula that I can now flashcard, and I will get this type of question right every single time with, I don't know, 17 seconds being burned off the clock. Understand that. Is this in your skill builder? Hell no. But is the underlying relationships absolutely there? Of course. And that's where, as you start to climb that pyramid, you're able to understand math at such a deep level that you can create new relationships. And so now, if you take a look at this question with this in mind, notice how easy this actually becomes. It's like, okay, the remainder is 14, the divisor is n, the decimal is 0.4, which of course is 2/5. Fractions are friendly, decimals are deadly. You want to convert them whenever you can. And now this entire 2-line question is really just, hey, 14 over n is 2/5, what's n? And that's it. And my guess is only half of us got this question correct, but more of us would have gotten it right if it were just in this form. But it's getting to this form that can be a challenge. And so I want you to start to realize, again, as Megan's emphasizing, dumbing things down is just such an essential part of this process. Now, of course, even once you're here, how you do it depends. Like for me, some of us are going to cross multiply, and I'd say that's a busted move. You know you just need to solve for n, bring the n over. No need to then rewrite all this again, bring the 5/2 over. Now, some of us will say order of operations, say multiplication, then division. So let me multiply, then let me divide. But again, if you're like me and you suck at math, then the bigger the number, the bigger the mistake. So why would I multiply up only to divide down? It makes no sense at all. So always look to cancel here, and then you get to 5 times 7 equaling 35. Again, this is a split-second type move. I don't want to say split seconds, but this doesn't take even more than 20 seconds to do a question like this if you have this in the back of your mind. Are they expecting you to know that? No, but they are expecting you to start to figure it out. So if some of you kind of got stuck on this, and some of you went about it in a long backdoor kind of way, you're starting to realize that, hey, there's real value to not only understanding things deeply, but being very creative on the fly to get to where you need to be. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this next question here. I think this is one of these questions which is important from a division, a division. Yeah, be careful, Justin. Those were two different relationships. Megan will walk you through it if need be. But I want you to look at this division-based question, because again, division can be kicked up a notch as needed by throwing you large and weird numbers. So notice what it says. It says 22,023 minus n is divisible by 11. And n is between 0 and 11, so what is n? Well, if you think about that, some of us may just say, okay, well then that means I just got to divide this by 11 and then boom, there's my remainder. It's like, yeah, that's true, but if long multiplication is for losers, so is long division, folks. So there's got to be a better way. Now, this question, of course, if instead of saying 22,023, we're more like, 35 minus n is divisible by 11, we know it's an easy as hell question. Well, the reality is this is easy as hell too. They're just hoping the large and weird numbers throw you off your game. You can't let it. So, I want to make sure you start to understand something. It is imperative to avoid rereading on this test. I said, rewriting will bury you, so will rereading. And so my philosophy on this is really simple. Write what you read as you read. You want to translate as you go. So here, when you're telling me 22,023 minus n is divisible by, I know from the skill builder when something is divisible by something, that means it's a multiple of that same something. So I'm going to write that verbing as an equal sign, and then I'm going to say it's 11 times an integer. Now notice I wrote the letters I and T there. I could write I for integer, or K for constant, or C for constant, as many people tend to do. But I know me and I suck at math. And if I put just an I or a K or a C, I'm going to convince myself it's a variable. And ultimately, if there's other divisibility in the mix, I may screw up my mistakes and then start to assume it's and solve and assume it's the same. And you can't do that. Whereas by adding two more letters for me, I know I don't trip over my own 2 feet. And so you have to start to know yourself when you go through these questions and essentially idiot-proof them along the way as needed. This guaranteed will do it for me. Now, if on the left-hand side here, I know that I've got a multiple of 11 here because the right-hand side's a multiple of 11, I want to make sure you understand what I will argue is the single most important formula not in your skill builder. But again, all the information you need is in your skill builder for it. And it's simple. It's just m plus or minus m equals m. What do those m's represent? Multiples plus or minus multiples equal multiples. So the multiple of a number, such as 2, plus a multiple of another 2, will by definition equal a multiple of 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. That's the way the number line works. That's the way divisibility cycles work. And so if you understand that, and right here we know that this by definition is a multiple of 11 because the right side's a multiple of 11, equal sign says both sides are the same, then I should be able to break out this number here and this number here into multiples of 11 plus or minus other multiples of 11. So question for you. When you see this 22,023, is there any easy multiple of 11 that you see that is large that you just say, hey, why don't I just take it, grab it out, and start to simplify this question 1,000-fold? And even there might be a clue for you, I suppose. What do you think? Yeah, awesome. So notice what you guys are starting to say here. You're saying, hey, look, if there's an 11, you just take that and multiply it by a units digit, in this case, say a 2, and tack on a bunch of zeros. And that is exactly what I would recommend you do. Now, some of you are stepping it up a notch. Some of you are saying 22,022. Great. You're far better at this than I am. And I want you to understand that for a second. it probably means you're going to eat it down the road. Meaning, some of us tend to do a lot more brute force math than we need to, and we start to end up in pain and suffering down the road. Be careful. Easy stuff. Tackle it, throw on some zeros, yank it out. Then all of a sudden, if you know this is a multiple of 11, by definition, this becomes a multiple of 11. And now, if you know that's a multiple of 11, this is like that easy question that I ultimately wanted to do, which is, hey, 23 minus some number is a multiple of 11. What is that number? This is not hard anymore at all. Now, just before anybody starts to panic too much, saying to yourself, like, wait a minute, this idiot's already said he sucks at math like half a dozen times and we ain't even in the first hour yet. I'm taking a class from this fool because I suck at math. Genuinely, what's up? How do I get my money back? Let me be clear on something. The reason I say I suck at math is because I didn't get a 99th percentile in the quant section. I got me a lowly 96th percentile. Furthermore, I ain't no engineer. I ain't no rocket scientist. I'm a stupid lawyer. This is not what I do, meaning brute force math all the damn time. But what I want you to understand is you don't need to. We started seeing that on Monday. This is a test that rewards reasoning. And like I said, usually there's two groups, well, I didn't say it Monday, but I'll tell it to you now. There's usually two groups of people that suck it up on the higher level quant questions. They are our good friends, the poets from college, and you get that because they don't know how to do quant. They count on their fingers and toes. But the second group are those engineers. Because when the questions get tough, they want to brute force it, and there ain't enough time in the world to brute force those questions. So that's something that I want us to keep in mind here as we start this process. Sometimes we have to reprogram those urges. All right, with that then, I want to get into this last section here, which is all about shortcutting calculations. Now, what's interesting about this is that I actually do not want you to shortcut any of this nonsense here. What is 12 times 15? What is 12 times 13? Hell no. I do not want you to shortcut that. Why? Because I need you to have that memorized down cold. Meaning, there's a 15 by 15 multiplication table, have it down cold. Again, a lot of things I'm going to go through in here are going to say, hey, you need to have this memorized, you need to do this, you need to do that, so on and so forth. I'm not going to ever give you a list of all these things or a handout, just take notes when I talk. The reason I'm telling you to do that is because those numbers pop up so damn frequently that you don't got time to dick around with any other shortcut. Just have an instant recall. Now, if you say to me, nah, dude, I don't want a 99th percentile, although 97% of you on Monday said you want a 7 something, so you got to be all up in there. If you're like a 6 something candidate in here, then maybe instead of 15 by 15, you got to memorize the 12 by 12s. But you still got to spend some time memorizing. Don't be walking around going, I don't need to know that shit. If you don't, you end up eating it down the road by spending too much time on mindless tasks of figuring it out. So, as a result, these on the grid, you know them immediately. But let's say you don't for the purposes of week 1 right now. What should you be doing? Well, we already know from day 1, this is units digits right off the bat. Anything that remotely resembles a human calculator, although this doesn't, you can try to weasel out that way. So 2 times 5, give me one answer ending in a 0, GMAC odds. And maybe they hook you up, maybe they don't. Alternatively, we know about approximation. So we say, all right, this is about 10, it's more than 10, so give me an answer that's about 150, but more ending in a 0. Okay, fair. Now, what is the multiplication shortcut for this though? It's to piggyback off of the approximation idea of sorts. And it's to basically rewrite these questions in terms of 10. So this 12 is really like a 10 and a 2. So 10 times 15, 150, 2 times 15, 30, add them up, you're at 180 that way. You do not write this out, you think it out. That's the idea. Now, will you ever see a question like this? Hell no, it's impossible, folks. I mean, it really is. What could you see instead? Hey, this big banquet is ordering up 15 cakes and each cake requires, a dozen eggs into the batter. So how many eggs do they need to buy at the market in the morning? That's just 15 times 12. So you could be tested on the underlying math. You'll just never see it like this. Now, look at the second guy. Same idea. You're like, all right, please, GMAC odds, give me a 6 and I'd be done. I don't even know what it is because I haven't spent any time in the multiplication tables. Okay, fine. Well, if you take it a step further, you could do it this way, but part of the benefit of knowing your 15 by 15 tables is you'll know the perfect squares down the middle. And by the way, even that shouldn't seem as daunting as it first appears, because half of this stuff is duplicative, half of this stuff you know, so really it's like, maybe like, what's 9 times 13? You don't know. Okay, fine, maybe 20, 30, 40 pairs you gotta work on. And so the idea here is if you know your perfect squares, which are absolutely non-negotiable, then you can rephrase a 13 as maybe the nearest 12 plus a 1. So 12 squares at 144, add another 12 at 156 that way. But what you're going to find in here is there's always a battle between memorization and derivation. So in the short run, memorization pays off in a big way. In the long run, it's all about derivation. And so here, it's all about memorization. But what about this guy? I don't effing know. I ain't gonna sit there and memorize the 256 by 256 times tables. Wasted my damn time. So that's where derivation kicks in. So again, knee-jerk response, give me an 8, and I'm done with this question, because this ain't a short answer fill in the blank. This is a multiple choice where answers are assets, and as a 99er, I thank the GMAT gods every single time I get a question that allows me to do just that. But they're gonna F with me a little bit. And if they're going to F with me, I've got to start, and by giving me multiple choices with 8, of course, then I got to start to use some of these techniques, which again come back ultimately to that approximation of sorts. Which means, hey, a 133 in my mind is 100 plus 33. I mean, I could do 130 plus 3, but I don't know 130 times 256. Again, I suck at math. But 100 times 256, that's easy stuff. Now, what's 33? Well, you know it's about a third of 100. I say about a third because 33.33333333 is really a third. This is about a third, slightly less. Well, what's a third of 25.6K? I don't know. Again, I suck at math, but I can approximate it. A third of 25 is about 8, more than 8. So I'd say to you it's about 8-ish K. Well, when I add that up, what do I get? About 34-ish K, ending in an 8. And I guarantee you there will be only one answer on the board that fits this description. You know why? Because this ain't a math test, but a reasoning test. And it's that added edge where the style points judges go wild as they give you a 10 out of 10 for how little math you do, but you're understanding the math concepts that gets you those higher scores. So then even take a look at this last question. What is 18 times 14 divided by 12 divided by 21? Well, if you follow the order of operations, the PEMDAS, the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, I got to do multiplication then division. 18 times 14, it ain't on my grid, system overload. I can't do that, too big. Numbers bigger, the bigger the numbers, bigger the mistake for me. So then I got to slow down a little bit so that I can speed up. One thing that you have to learn as a 99er, or at least a 99er in training, is that the setup is everything. Take your time with the setup, then worry about execution. Too many people get sloppy on the setup and then they die on execution. Of course you're gonna die because you sucked at the setup. Take the time on the setup. So if I look at this and I say, okay, you're really asking me what's 18 times 14 divided by 12, and then you wanna take this whole thing and divide by 21, which really means multiplying by a 1 over 21, then this is really what the question's asking. And if I already know that I shouldn't multiply up to divide down, I should be looking to cancel always. A huge benefit of knowing your 15 by 15s is you start to know what times what equals what. You start to get a sense of even GCFs of sorts. So when I see 18s and 12s, I don't see 18s and 12s. If I'm looking to cancel, I see a bunch of 6s everywhere. If I see 14s and 21s, and again, I'm looking to cancel, I'm seeing 7s everywhere. 2s cancel, 3s cancel, and all that becomes the number 1. Do I have any clue what any of those numbers are? I have no effing clue at all. But it does not even matter to me, because what I understand is how to get to the right answer as quickly as humanly possible. And so what you want to start to think about, again, is if you're doing math the long way, you're probably doing it the wrong way. I cannot stress that enough. All right, with that then I want to get us to this next section, which is the factors, multiples, and the number line. This is a good time to take our first break of the day. Let's put 5 on the clock, let's recaffeinate, let's come back, because I think things are going to start to get good and tough as soon as the break is up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get back to work here on this next section, which is all about the factors and multiples concepts. These guys say, hey, it's arguably the most important skill set on this test. I think it's strong language, folks. I would definitely argue this is pretty damn important, especially on the quant side of things. So you do want to spend some time on it. So we're going to start with some real simple, basic definitional concepts, and then start to work our way up in terms of difficulty. So let's start with just the basics. What is a prime number? It's exactly a positive integer with exactly two factors. The idea there is one in itself. What's the smallest prime? The number 2. How many prime numbers exist between -10 and 10? We'll start with the number 2, work your way up. There's 2, there's 3, there's 5, and there's 7. So there's 4 prime numbers in that range there. Now, note this next question here. It says, are the following numbers prime or composite? Remember what a composite number is? It's a product of primes. This is a very easy question. Hell, there may be some of you in here that know the answer to this question without doing shit to it, basically. And what I would say to you is that's great and all, but you will probably die on the very next question. And the very next question is the same exact thing as this question. So why are you going to die on the next one if you can do this in seconds? The reason is you probably don't have an approach that's scalable. You've got an approach that works when the stuff is easy, so maybe something like this, you just have it memorized. But when the stuff gets tough, what do? You panic. You choke. And that's something you want to start to prevent. So when you look at a question like this, I want you to start to have a process at hand. I know I've got a process. I'm going to share my process with you, and it's important you start to pick it up. Now, like I started to say the other day, this is not the time to be pushing back and going and resorting to what it is that you already know how to do. Resorting to doing what you already know how to do, for the most part, either hasn't already paid off and that's why you're here, or probably isn't going to pay off and that's why you're here. So you want to start to push yourself past comfort levels to try to do new things, think new ways. That becomes very important, at least if you want a top score. And so what I would argue on a question like this is you do not look at this number by number. That is what many people are prone to do. But like I started saying the other day, and I started to remind you of here as well, there are no numbers by accident on this test. Everything has an intelligent design behind it. And the test maker, he's trying to screw over 99% of you. He's trying to hook up 1% of us like Megan and myself. And on every single question that he tries to give us, he gives us some sort of clue. Sometimes he's whispering, sometimes he's yelling, and on a question like this, I would argue he's whispering. He's saying, look man, I'm going to give you a consecutive set of integers. You got me? And at that point I say, yeah, I got you. Whereas some of you are like, what the F? Who cares if it's consecutive or not? Well, that's the process part. Once you got a process, the fact that it's consecutive integers, it's a gift. If you had no process, I could see why it doesn't matter. So what's the process in my mind? The process in my mind is, hey, let me start to test divisibility rules themselves rather than the numbers themselves. And what divisibility rules am I going to start with? The easiest ones in the bunch. The 2s and the 5s. Because that doesn't require me to do jack. It just tells me to look at the last digit, get it done. So if the last number is even, last number is a multiple of 5, it's a multiple of 2 and 5, that's it. Now, notice in this case, I'm not going to now check every single number, because that would just be as bad as I was saying 2 minutes ago. So what am I going to do instead? I am going to piggyback off of the single most important formula not in your skill builder. And that is to say the multiples plus or minus multiples equaling multiples. And thus, all I'm going to look for is a multiple of 2 and plus or minus multiples of 2 to that. So obviously 28 is a multiple of 2, add 2, add 2, add 2, add 2, and I'm done. Multiples of 5, clearly this is, subtract it, doesn't catch anything. Add it, catches that. And now I'm done. So what I am now left with is 4 potential prime numbers. So now I go to the next divisibility rule. 3. 3 is not complicated. Add them up, check the digits. So when I look at this and say, hey, what's a multiple of 3? Obviously 33 is. If I add 3 or subtract 3, I don't catch any more numbers in my net. Now I'm done with that. So then I go to the next one. 4. 4 says look at the last 2 digits. But wait a minute. If I go to 4, I know I'm going to get an even number by definition. But I've already eliminated every single even number here by killing the 2's. And thus, what I should start to recognize is, when I'm testing to see if numbers are prime or composite, it's a waste of my time to test divisibility rules for composite numbers, because I will already have eliminated them by testing for divisibility rules with the prime numbers. So here, I don't need to test the 4's, I don't need to test the divisibility rule for 6's, because I've already killed all the 2's and 3's. So I would go to the very next prime number. Now the question is, do I go all the way up to 37? So I go 7, 11, then 13, 17, 19, I can just keep going? Well, probably not. What's the reasoning? It's not efficient. So let's take this number 36 as an example here. If I had to figure out what all the factors are to 36, I would say there's 1, 36, 2, 18, 3, 12, 4, 9, 6, and 6. Did I just throw a bunch of random numbers up on the screen? Hell no. I was doing it methodically, because again, I suck at math. So I start with the smallest number, the biggest number, go a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, 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 until I can't go any further. That, of course, is a square root when the 2 numbers are the same. Now notice something. If I were trying to catch, say, 36 in my net, and I wanted to eliminate it, I could do so by eliminating the multiples of 1. It would eliminate 36. There would be no point in me then trying to eliminate the multiples of 36 for the purposes of catching this one, because I've already caught it as a multiple of 1. Same thing on the next row. If I eliminated the multiples of 2, I would have killed it. There's no need for me now to check the multiples of 18. Multiples of 3, killed it. No need to check the multiples of 12. So what that tells me, at least, is, hey, dude, all you got to do is test the divisible rules for one side of the equation, either the left side or the right side. And again, given that I suck at math, the bigger the number, the bigger the mistake, you better believe all I'm going to do is the numbers on the left side, which means all I got to go is to the square root of the number. So what's the square root of 37? I have no clue. I know 6 squared is 36. I know 7 squared is 49. Given that that's really close to 36, I'd say probably 6.1-ish is the square root of 37. So all I got to do is test all the way up to 6.1-ish. Well, shit, I can't test 6.1. I can only test the integer closest to it. So that'd be 6. And I've already tested all the numbers up to 6 that are prime. So now I'm done with my testing. Apparently there's 1, 2, 3 primes in the mix. Now, like I said, some of you may look at this and say, what a waste of damn time. I could do this in 3 seconds. I know all these numbers memorized. Sweet, good for you. Now what the F do you do? Because notice what the question now asks is, how many prime numbers exist between 200 and 220? My guess is, even if you had those memorized, there's absolutely zero chance you have these memorized. Because first of all, there's a boatload of them. Instead of like 10 numbers, they're going to be like 20. On top of which, instead of just simple 2-digit numbers, they're giving you triple-digit numbers. And I think that's important to start to appreciate, oh crap, I need to have now an approach that scales. But I want to take us back to Monday even for a second. Remember I said only the idiots look at the answers at the very end? 9 hours, we're looking at the answers always. Part of that is even at the very beginning, because sometimes the test maker will give you clues. So, question for you, and this is a bit of an opinion question. When you look at these answer choices, what do you think the test maker is trying to tell you there? What clues do you think I should be able to start to pick up on? I'd be curious to know what you guys see as you look at these answers. What perhaps is crossing your mind? I'll tell you what crosses my mind, and let's compare notes. What do you think, guys? I think that's fair, Pilar, and exactly, Karen, solid. Jeff, first of all, we know there aren't that many. Definitely capping it on the 4 side. I agree with all that. What else? I think Kevin, I think that's fair. Notice he used the word probably. Han, of course, is going a little bit stronger. I don't know if there can't be none. It's a freaking option. But there's probably, I like the way Kevin phrased it because, you know, you've got so many that are positive probably on that tip. I think that's fair. What else do you guys see here? Maybe, let me give you perhaps a slightly different question, and then perhaps you can tell me what you think. Imagine instead, this is question 1, this is question 2. What do you think on this? What is the harder question? So it's the same question up top. These are these answer choices, these are these answer choices. What's harder, question 1 or question 2 here? What do you think? Or do you say they're the same? You can say they're the same if you want. So I want to be clear here, guys. I don't like the fact that some of you are saying question 2 is harder. Hell no. Question 1 is 1,000 times more difficult, folks. Notice why for a second. Let's say hypothetically on question 2, you came up with 4 prime numbers. Let's just say. Shit, 4 ain't an answer. Exactly, Joseph. Like if you look at number 2, you come to 4, you're like, it's probably 5. I probably effed one up. Whereas if you look at this and you're like, all right, I came to 4, maybe it is 4. Maybe it's actually 3. Shit, maybe you screwed up by 2 of them and it's actually 2. I don't know. So what you start to realize is if you came up with 4 here, the chance of being 10, pretty damn slim. You came up with 4 here and the chance of being 2, hey, shit, man, that's a reality. And so what you start to realize, at least as a 99er or a 99er in training, this is a whisper from the GMAT gods, the test maker himself saying, hey, you better bring some serious respect on this question. Because I'm looking to weed some people out. Whereas on this, fuck, you can get a little sloppy if you want, I don't care. I got you. And that's an important distinction to start to pay attention to. So even how tightly an answer choice distribution is something to take note of. So again, I want to remind you, top of the pyramid, thinking like the test maker, what you got to be on the lookout for, this is that kind of material. If you're here right now trying to learn, wait, so what are the divisible, what's a prime number again? What's the divisible rule? Your ass is so far behind on where you need to be. That's skill builder, low level shit. I'm not focused on that, but this is the kind of stuff that takes us to that next level, getting it to the 7 somethings. So I want us to be paying attention to these clues moving forward. All right. With that, then, here's what I will say to you. This is a hard question. It's not a hard question because it requires a lot of math. It's a hard question because it has 0 room for error. Bring serious respect on this. I'm telling you right now, probably a quarter of the class is going to get this right. Meaning like 75% of you are going to eat it. And some of you are going to eat it in embarrassing ways. Start to note when it's embarrassing, guys. Do not give yourselves a free pass. Because if you're the type of guy that gives himself a free pass in week 1 for embarrassing, week 2 you give yourself free pass, week 3 you give yourself free pass, and then week 6 you start to email for some serious help. Because you're like, dude, my test scores are embarrassing now. You got any advice for me? And it's like, no, idiot. Remember week 1, week 2, week 3 where you kept making excuses for your embarrassing performances? What do you expect? Week 6, of course you're going to get an embarrassing test score. Like, you got to have a 0 tolerance from the get-go. And I think this question is a great sort of indicator of such. So, let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Let's bring some serious respect on this. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. In terms of the numbers in the board, man, this is ugly. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous in here. We might have to do a little bit of a fireside come to Jesus pulse check in a little bit. You guys are, I don't want to say awfully quiet, but definitely a quiet bunch in here to start. But secondly, I'm actually quite worried with some of the performances on some of these questions. Like this one is, I don't want to say abysmal, but dude, we ain't even hitting 20% right. That is troublesome. And so if some of you were like, oh, there was a skill builder we had to do today, clearly don't repeat that mistake next week. If some of you are like, yeah, I just checked the box on it, clearly don't repeat that mistake next week. You really, you're paying a lot to be here and you're spending a lot of time to do it. Do it right is what I would say. Especially when 97% of you want a 7 something. I'm telling you right now, they don't just give those scores out because you register for a course or you register for the test. So let's rewind back on this. The very first thing that I believe you absolutely needed to do was write these numbers out. If you did not write these numbers out, that's on you. You're an idiot. You deserve to get the question wrong. Again, you should not have pride interfering. You should say F pride, dumb it down as needed. Now, do you need to write out 20-ish numbers? Hell no. Obviously, all the evens can go. So I would just write down all the odds. It takes you probably 10 seconds, but you have plenty of time to do that. Do you need to write the multiples of 5? No, but I think probably with maybe OCD tendencies, I'm okay with it. I know I got them, I would do it. Now, I'm down to 8 potential prime numbers. Not even in the poll yet. So, gotta keep going. Well, where do I go? Multiples of 3. Now, we know that, add them up, and you're good to go. But this is where, as a 99er, things start to change. Am I going to sit here and add up every single number? No, nobody's got time for that. It's not going to beat the timer to beat the test. No style points judge is going to give me crazy points for doing that. So I'm going to come right back to what I said is the single most important formula, not in your skill builder, but based entirely off of the number line and divisibility concepts. It's just multiples plus or minus multiples equaling multiples. So I say, hey, let me find a multiple of 3 and plus or minus a multiple of 3 to that. So obviously 201 is a multiple of 3. That's not hard. But notice if I add 3 to that, I have odd plus odd equals even. That's even odd properties. That's not going to work because I've already killed all my even numbers. So this is where I have to slow down a little bit so I could speed up. I got to say, well, wait a minute. If I got an odd number, why don't I just add an even multiple of 3 to see what else I can snare? So instead of 201 plus 3, I'm just going to do 201 plus a 6. So that would get me to 207 plus a 6, which is 213, plus a 6, which is 219. And I am now done with the multiples of 3. I'm not testing anything else. Notice I'm now down to 4 potential primes. Would you believe a quarter of the class picked choice E right now and it's like, yep, that's a good answer for me. Something is not computing for me. 97% of you want a 7 something on Monday. 25% of you are like, yeah, give me a 4 freaking 100 on this test. That's what choice E represents in my opinion. Like, I'm done. What do you mean you're done? You haven't done shit on this question. Remember what I said already. You got to go to the nearest square root of the number. I don't know what 220 square root is, but I know 15 squared is 225, so 220 is probably like 14.9. That means I got to go all the way up to 14, not 14.9, which means, of course, I need to do all the prime numbers. So I got 2, 3, 5. I got to get to a 7. I got to get to 11. I got to get to a 13. But 25% of you are like, nah, fuck that shit, man. It's optional. I don't need to do that level of math. This ain't a math test. It's a reasoning test. You keep crying about it that way, that's the way I'm going to do it. Hell no. You cannot tap out like that, people. That's where the laziness and the arrogance starts to bite you big time. So now let's continue on. So let's get to the multiples of 7. Well, there are rules for 11. There are rules for 7 that you can have memorized. But they're not scalable. You need to think in terms of universal divisibility. And the quickest way to do it is look for an easy multiple plus or minus multiples from there. So question for you. What easy multiple of 7 do you know exists within that range? You don't need to have all the crazy multiplication tables. You just need to have some basics to get it up there. Dude, 217, way beyond my pay grade, Kirby. 210, I can get behind. Because again, what do? I just say 7 times 3 is 21, and then add on a 0. So I'm at 210. And then I just say, hey, plus 7 minus 7, minus 7 plus 7. And I'm now done with essentially the multiples of 7. And that is it. Like, this is the beauty behind what I said is the most important formula not in your skill builder. I mean, the concepts are there. Your ability as a 99er to start to create that new information becomes what's so important to your GMAT health. And so now, of course, I'm down to 2 potential primes. Choice D is knocked out. And when I'm looking at the polls, let's make this just 49%. Half of the class are in the DE world right now. Hopefully people are starting to feel real bad right now because I think these are terrible moves. Like, if arguably you're going to get this question wrong, I would say be in this half of things, not this half. Because in retrospect, at least, hopefully this half starts to look like where the people that are lazy, don't want to do all the work, or maybe are super slow, they're sitting here still doing every single number instead of leveraging what I said is the most important formula, not in your skill builder. And you don't want to be associated with those people. It's guilt by association, gang. So now for the 11s, we did this already earlier. Get me to a 22, add on a 0. So I'm at 220, add an 11, bus, go 220 minus 11. And I'm done with that. So now I'm down to 1 potential prime, or 0, of course. So I'm at 13. What I got 13? 130, 260. If I go 260 on this, keeping it real simple, that's a difference of 49. Is 49 a multiple of 13? 39 is. Well, that tells me then this is not a multiple of 13. I'm done with that one. That means it's prime. Choice B becomes my final answer. It takes me a hell of a lot longer to talk about this question than it does for me to execute. And so what I want you to start to see for a split second is, this is the same exact question as this. Same exact question, the same exact process. But notice how they made it so much more challenging that not even a fifth of the class, 4 out of 5 people here, more than 4 out of 5, missed this damn question. There's not a good reason for that. But that's what this test does. Looking to weed people out. Sometimes because they're sloppy, sometimes because they're lazy, sometimes because they're arrogant. You don't want to be in that group. Notice this little question here. It says, what does it mean if a number has an odd number of factors here? Anybody know what the answer to this is? I'd be curious. It's not really a challenge, although it's an interesting kind of concept to think about. Yeah, awesome. So you guys are getting this. It's a perfect square. And in fact, let's go back to this for a split second. If you notice here when I did this 36, if you remember, I had all the factors here. But notice these numbers were the same. So if I just actually got rid of one, I would now have 9 factors. It'd be odd. It's odd because it's a perfect square. So things come in pairs. When a pair gets severed is when things go odd. All right, excellent. All right, take a look at this next question. I think this is a good question. How many unique divisors does 222 have? Be careful on this. Some of you really need to have a comeback on this question. This is an easier question. but it's also ready to start rocking people's worlds if you're not being respectful. Let's put 2 on the clock and then let's talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So, question for you. Which one of these answers should you be able to eliminate immediately? Like, there is no reason you can even bother to consider it. In fact, this should be, even from an automatic guessing point of view, nowhere on your radar. Awesome. So, we're at least agreeing that choice E, total bust. Why are there people in E right now, folks? Talk to me. Explain yourself. You know, I need to understand. If you're guessing 1 and 5, go back and do the damn skill builder. Remember, this is asking for you, essentially asking how many factors 222 has. There ain't no infinite number. Like maybe 0 has an infinite number of factors. Something times something can always equal 0 at some point. But 222? Hell no, it doesn't work that way. So this completely out. At least be in the A, B, C, D tip, and I can live with that. Again, the test may not punish you for terrible wrong answers. I would argue you should punish yourself for it, and I secretly will. So now let's start to rewind back on this. Let's start trying to break this down. Again, if you were doing it the way that I did say that 36 question, you just start with the number 1 and itself. 2 and 111, pretty easy to get at least there. Would you believe that almost 15% of you decided, yep, choice A is a good move? I'm done with this question. That's mind-boggling to me. Remember, I gave you a lot of time on this. What are you doing with that allocation of time to end on choice A? You're just dicking around. Now you're disrespecting the freaking test maker, saying, dude, let me spit in your face. And you can't be doing that. Not if you want a 7 something. Shit, even if you were in the 3% in here that wanted a 6 something. Again, this is the classic 400 level answer choice, folks. I cannot stress that enough. Now, well, you know already 3 is a factor here because you add up the 2's, you get to a 6, multiple of 3, boom. Do I know what this number is here? No. Do I care what the number is there? No. Because you know why? This ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test. And thus I know at least it ain't 3, it's some other number, so I know that I've got 6 factors. Almost a third of you are in choice B. That blows my mind too. Because if you get this far and you recognize that 2 and 3 are factors, how the F do you not know 6 is a factor? Like, at this point, at least get to, what is that, C? Like, you haven't done anything, but you should already get a sense that there's 8 factors. Now, is this a sustainable process? No, I'm doing it in a very shitty way, frankly. But, excuse me, at least I'm down to 50-50 here between C and D. So what should I do instead? Because in order to do this right, I got to go to the nearest square root. Again, I don't know what it is, but I'll say it's about 14.9. Excuse me, which means I don't have to check the 14.9 part, just the 14 itself. Go all the way from 6 to 14. Too much work. Hold on, I need something. Sorry guys, I'm like getting sick and now I'm fighting it. So I gotta do a better way on this. And so what's the better way gonna be? I would say start to use prime factorization to help you. So what does the prime factorization look like? Obviously 2 and 111, you can see that. The 111 you can pull out pretty quickly with a 3. Now, I don't want to say 111 is such a frequently occurring number, but at least when you start to see the 3 in there, you do start to see some numbers that come together pretty quickly. 37 being that other factor. 37 we established minutes ago was prime, so we are done with the prime factorization. How does that prime factorization chart start to help us with this? Well, I want you to start to recognize the relationship between the two. Every single row on here is nothing more than a re-articulation of those 3 factors, just in different ways. So this is 1 times a 2, 3, 37. This is a 2 times a 3, 37. If this is a 3, the only other factors I have left are the 2 and the 37. So I should be able to say this is a 3 times a 74. That makes sense. 3 times 70 is 210. 3 times 4 is 12. Add them up, you're at 222, using the multiplication shortcuts from earlier. So this is a 6, which is a 2 and a 3. And this should be a 37. And that makes sense. 6 times 30 is 180. 6 times 7 is 42. Add them up, you're at 222. So the only question is now, are there any other prime factors that I've overlooked here in terms of combinations? And when I look and I stare, I say, no, I've covered them all. So I guess I'm done with this question. Choice C does become that final answer. Now, is that a great approach? No, that's just a good approach. This was a mediocre at best. That's now in conjunction a good approach. So what's a better approach? An A+ approach is basically using that knowledge, but shortcutting it with some combinatorics in the mix. And we'll talk combinatorics in week 6. But the idea there is there's different ways of arranging these things. Let's try to figure that out. So the shortcuts in your books, I would flag it, memorize it, and bust it out as needed moving forward. But basically step 1 is just figure out the prime factorization in terms of bases and exponents. Step 2, strip those exponents off, toss the bases. So you're left with a bunch of 1s on that one, 2 to the 1, 3 to the 1, 37 to the 1. Step 3 is you add 1 to each exponent always. So now you're left with a bunch of 2s, and then you just multiply across till you get to a bunch of 8s, or I guess 1 8, and that's it. Now if you're wondering why you're adding 1, the idea is you're taking into account the possibility that that factor is not present, but it's something to the 0 power or 1 itself. But again, that's nuanced, don't worry, memorize the shortcut. So then as a result, even if you start to take a look at a question such as this one, it says, hey, how many unique factors exist for each of the following numbers? Let's take a quick easy one here, like 100. The old me would break this down in terms of the number 1 and itself, then 2 and 50, 3 no, 4 and 25, 5, 20, 6 no, 7 no, 8 no, 9 no, 10 and 10. And I got me 9 factors. And it makes sense, odd, perfect square, fine. It didn't take me too long, but I effed up this question. Why? They asked me how many, they never asked me what. And because of that, I gotta reevaluate my approach. And so then if I'm thinking about it from the prime factorization, basis, exponent shortcut, I say, okay, well, what's 100? 2 squared, 5 squared. Now, if you say to me, well, how the hell do you know that so well? Because another thing that I make my students do is on that 15 by 15 multiplication table, be able to take a dart, throw it at any cell on that grid, and have the prime, base, and exponents down immediately. You're not sitting there factor treeing. In my opinion, if you're factor treeing on this test, you are effing something up. And so, if I know that, hey, 100 is just 2 squared, 5 squared, strip off those exponents, toss the bases, add 1 to each, multiply through. So you're at 9 within seconds. Now if you say to me, hey, that only took you like, say, 10 seconds, that took you 3 seconds, big deal, you saved 7 seconds. Big deal? You know how much 7 seconds is? Forget for a second that I cut the time by 70%. That itself is a huge reduction. But 7 seconds could make the difference between you being able to double check on something, or you being able to stick the landing on a question, you being able to hit confirm or submit on a question. Like, this stuff matters, guys. Do not underestimate the significance of a second, let alone 7 of them. All right, how about this guy, the multiples concept here. It says, how many multiples of 3 exist between negative 10 and 10? Now, on a question like this, and remember I started introducing you to it on Monday, I would say, hey, there are high-level traps, low-level traps. Question for you. What is the high-level trap here? Meaning, what is the answer choice that someone is likely to pick because they come pretty damn close, but then they fall short? They just don't stick the landing on it. What mistake do you think they make on this question here? No, come on. What do you mean? F that. No. Yeah, don't say 3. Hold on. This is a shit move, guys. This is like as low-level trap as it gets. This guy's on the road to the 300. And so if someone says 3, you say to them, hey, you need to be in a different course. Like, that ain't even close. The high-level trap here is what David and Kevin and Mara are saying, and several of you also said they forget the 0, and that would be correct. Let's make sure we understand that. If an idiot looks at this question, it's like, oh yeah, 3, 6, 9, that's good? No, dude, you're on the road to failing. Like, that is not, you know, a trap that you want even crossing your mind. This you can understand. The guy's like, ah, yeah, you idiot, don't forget the negatives. Negative 3, negative 6, negative 9, 3, 6, 9, boom, there's 6 of them. It's like, what? Again, using the rule that I said is not in your skill builder, or I guess the formula, but the rule is multiples plus or minus multiples equal multiples. Like, you can add 3, you can add 3, you can add 3, subtract 3, and then it's like, wait, what? How do you just jump over here? You gotta go through this as well. And so to me, what you start to realize is that 0 is a multiple of all numbers, by definition. Everything starts at 0, and then you add or subtract from there. And because 0 is a multiple of all numbers, that means 0 is a multiple of 2, which means it is an even number. Remember, odd numbers are not defined as being a multiple of anything. So that's what you start to realize. So 0 is even, but just make sure you remember it ain't positive or negative, that's all. All right, with that then I want to bring us to our first data sufficiency question of the day. This is a good question. It's also a very trap-worthy question, guys. There are crap answers here too. Beware of them. If you do not know what the number one wrong answer in the poll is going to be, you, my friends, are in it. It is just that simple. Now, as a reminder, how does data sufficiency operate? Here is the question stem. Is integer y divisible by 24? That question is answered with either a yes or a no. Yes, it is. No, it's not. That's the end of the question. And the answer, I suppose. The test does not care whether the answer is actually yes. The test does not care whether the answer is actually no. You have enough information, the test is happy. It's when you say, oh, I don't know, maybe it's yes sometimes, maybe it's no the other times, the test is not happy. You are therefore in a position of weakness. You say, hey, I don't have enough info. Not sufficient is how it becomes. Now remember, statement 1 and statement 2 are facts. They are true. They are pieces of evidence. If you have a piece of evidence, your question is, what do you do with it? You have to then look back at the question and you have to say, hey, if I have this, is this enough to answer the question? That's the idea here. As a reminder, Domingo, shut the hole, right? No one cares yet. I didn't ask you what the damn trap is. Just because I wrote the damn word trap here doesn't mean I want you to tell me the main chat. In fact, you gotta respect the basic rules here. I cannot stress that enough. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and tackle this question. All right, it's all good. First violation, I'm not booting anybody out. You guys were so good on Monday. But as a reminder, no spoilers here. Now, as you get into this question, remember these 5 answer choices are fixed. They never change. It's on you to start memorizing these things. So let's put 2 on the clock. Bring some respect. If you don't know the sucker, you're in it. We'll talk much more about this when time is up. All right, guys, so let's go back and take a crack at this question. As a general reminder to the people that are challenged in listening, Arpine and whoever else wants to join Arpine's camp, I don't need a second TA, I've got an excellent one helping me. 2, you're an idiot. We've been in class for almost 2 hours. Never once has a poll opened up immediately. Like, connect the dots. That's all I would say. 3rd, focus on getting questions right. Don't worry about anything else. Cannot stress that enough. All right, with that out of the way, let me ask you this question here. What is the number 1 wrong answer in the poll right now that 1/3 of the class is picking? Because they just don't respect the process. They come at this class and they say, I deserve a 760. There doesn't have to be anything I need to do about the way I approach these things. Yeah, absolutely right. It is choice C. Now, are there other answers on the board? You bet. But they're dog shit answers. And let's be clear about that. And so, you know, when we get into data sufficiency in week 4, I said to you, there will be a reward system that is a game changer. Strategically, it makes data sufficiency your new best friend, at least in my opinion. And then you will start to see through the lens of that, not through my opinionated lens, but through the lens of the actual data sufficiency reward system that will tell you that the other answers are god-awful. And so to me, that's something you want to be thinking about. So let's start to rewind and start to break this down. Now notice what it says. It says, is integer y divisible by 24? Given that it's a divisibility question, my instinct is to translate it into a divisibility question using the concepts of multiples, so 24 times int, or 24 times an integer. Given that it's about divisibility, I like to break things down immediately to prime factors and exponents. So that's really saying 2 cubed times 3 times int. And thus the question is asking me, does y have 3 2's and a 3 in it? Just that simple. So then when I look at statement 1 says, hey, you're a multiple of a 2 and a 3. Statement 2 says you're a multiple of 2 2's. Does it matter which statement I go with? Not really. They both look more or less interchangeable. And thus I'd start with the first guy. The first guy tells me there's a 2 and a 3. That's what it tells me. I want to know if there's 3 2's and a 3. Well, I don't know if those other 2's are in that integer or not. They could be there, they may not be there. Sometimes it's yes as a result, sometimes it's no as a result. No way then is statement 1 sufficient, and both A and D get shot on arrival. Same thing with statement 2. I know there's 2 2's in there because that's a fact. There's potentially other stuff in there. But I want to know if there's 3 2's and a 3. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. Guaranteed B is out, and I'm down to 50-50 C or E. I am not picking a single goddamn number on this question because it is not an efficient way to go. Now, some people love to number pick. These are the same people that suck it up on the quant side of things, because I can tell you this much right now. No 99er ever walks out of the quant section going, damn, I crushed 31 quant questions because I number picked 31 times. Now, are there times and places to number pick? You bet. This is not one of them, in my opinion. So I like to tackle divisibility-based questions conceptually, understanding multiples and factors. Again, that's the section we're under. And if I can tackle these questions that way, F 2 minutes on a question like this. This is like no joke, a 26-second question. And you hit it, you move right on. Because you want to bank all the time you can for the questions that are tough. And this ain't it, my friends. So now we have to combine both pieces of information. Meaning I know statement 1 is true, I know statement 2 is true. I now need to say if I have both of them together, is it enough for me to answer the question being asked? Well, what does it tell you? If you know y is a multiple of 6 and y is a multiple of 4, then that must mean y is a multiple of 6 and 4, or y is a multiple of 24. That's why the guy picks choice C. But if you did the skill builder, you would know that's not how you solve LCM. LCM says, hey, you take the highest power of every factor that you see there. And so there are 2 2's and a 3, and you pop it out that way. That's what you know to be a fact. Well, do I have 3 2s in there? Maybe, maybe not. That's what tells me choice E becomes my final answer. And again, this takes seconds, not minutes. Now, of course, I could have picked numbers all along the way. I could have said 6, I could have said 24, I could have said 4, I could have said 24, and then once I'm here, I could say 12, I could say 24. I could do all that. But what if I'm not picking the right numbers? What if over here, for example, instead of 24, I'm like 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. I'm going to pick a bunch of numbers. Hey, this is no, that's no, that's no, that's no, that's no. Hey, I guess it's always no. He said, as long as you get yes or no, the test don't care. I keep getting no, so I guess I'm good to go here. And it's like, no, you idiot. You just didn't go far enough. So that's why number picking is a suspect approach on many questions, because you just don't end up picking the right numbers, or you don't do it the right way. I will talk about how to do it the right way when we get into data sufficiency in week 4, where number picking is a truly viable strategy. But this ain't it, in my opinion. That said, if you were to actually plot it out, notice what you would see here. The overlap, where sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no. Whenever the no's and the yeses differ, there's no way that you have enough information to answer the question. And that's something that's important to realize. Okay, with that then, I want to wrap up this section here. Notice what it says. This family is not merely a collection of skills, but rather a way of thinking. Practice often. I think that's important, not only just for this section, but this entire lesson. I got some great private chats from 1 or 2 of you saying, man, this is a wake-up call. And it's like, I know. Things are getting real quickly up in here. All right, with that then, I want to get into the world of number properties next. Good time to take our final break of the evening. Let's go ahead and put 5 on the clock, and then we'll get back to work. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this next section with regard to number properties, such an important part of this test. Number properties are stuff that we already started to get an introduction into the other day with some units, digits, and we'll spend some time with that. We'll get into the world of even odds, obviously, as well as positive negatives. So let's start with this first question here, because I think it's a question that is a good one. It is one where you can so easily start to do too much math and get hammered as a result. So notice what it says. It says, what is the units digit of 15 to the 9 minus 16 to the 6? Think about that. It's large, it's weird, it could cause you to do a whole lot of math. But remember what I said to you guys. The test maker is constantly either trying to whisper or trying to yell at us as a 99er strategies to employ on a given question. So here where it says what is the unit digit of, well, notice in this particular case they could have said what is 15 to the 9 minus 16 to the 6. That's a hell of a lot harder of a question. But they didn't. They screamed out, hey, what is the units digit? And to me that is so important to say, hey, I know exactly what I need to be doing. On top of which, even if they didn't say that, meaning even if they just said, what is 15 to the 9 minus 16 to the 6, and they gave you some long blown out answer choices, does not mean you should be tackling it that way. But instead you should be thinking to yourself, hey, what have I learned on day one of this course? If it's a human calculator type effort that's needed, I probably got to weasel out with some units digits or some sort of approximation. So the fact that they're just hammering you home big time on it right in the front tells you all you need. Now, do people know what these are? No. You try to figure it out. You dumb it down. You try to establish those patterns. That's what you need to do. That's what a 99er does. The only thing I want to say on this is be careful. There is a great trap lurking. Again, if you don't see it, you're in it. As you're going through this question, respect it. Again, sometimes some of us are thinking we're seeing traps. We ain't seeing traps, we're seeing crap. And that's important also. Because if all I see is a crap answer as the trap, that means I'm probably in a trap answer. Versus if I see the trap answer, I'm probably in the right answer. And that's all I want us to be thinking about. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and put a minute and a half on the clock. Let's bring some respect. Let's talk when time's up. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this question. This is an interesting breakdown on this. I'm not going to lie, the number one wrong answer is not the trap answer, but it's in fact a slightly worse answer, and it shouldn't be that way. But let's try to break this down, trying to, again, start with the basics first. So the idea here is, you know that 15 squared ends in a 5 either because you know it has 225 or because you just say 5 times 5 is a 25 and figure out the unit digit that way. Now, how do I get to 15 to the third? I would just multiply it by another 15, which again would get me to a 5. And so at that point, hopefully I'm feeling pretty comfortable deducing that 15 to the 9 ends in a 5. Same thing on the 16 side. Now, by the way, in addition to knowing your 15 by 15 multiplication tables, I would strongly advise you to know your 16 squared and 25 squared because those numbers come up often enough. So 16 squared is 256. Hopefully you have it in your back pocket. If not, you say 6 times 6 is a 36 and you're good right there. Then you multiply it to another 16. And then you say, okay, that ends in a 6. So bottom line is you figure out this ends in 5, that ends in a 6. Question for you. About 80% of us got this far. What is the mistake someone's likely to make and trap out right now? Again, they come this far. What do they end up picking on this one? Yeah. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Be careful, guys. It is choice A. You got to be careful on that, Domingo. It is definitely not E. Because again, let's rewind back on this one. What do you know? Yeah, 15 is smaller than 16 for sure. But 9 is so much bigger than that 6. And as a result, you know that 15 to 9 could be a much, much bigger number. And when that happens, and you got to subtract, remember you just got to borrow. So 15 minus a 6 just ends up being that 9. Of course, choice E becomes the right answer. And so is this a complex math question? No. Is my guess that if people weren't in if choice A were not on the board, we'd have more people in E? Of course. But that's all you want to see. Sure, I'll buy that. So as we get into this, the one thing that I want to make sure you realize is with regard to even odd properties, you still suck at listening, but focus on the damn question. You're already 0 for 2 with your listening skills today. And good news is we got rid of Arpine for good. Again, I run a tight ship in here, people. If this ain't the ship you want, find another ship. Now, the one thing I want to say is with regard to even odd properties, you have to realize that, you know, if you can memorize these, great. I would say they're very helpful. But if you can't memorize them, that's okay too. All I would say is just try to shortcut it through some derivation. Like for me, I say 2 is an even number, 3 is an odd number, and I'm able to kind of weasel my way out that way. So with that, then I want to take a look at this question here. I think it's a good question. It's one where, again, from a data sufficiency perspective, your job is not to worry about if the answer is yes or no. They don't care. You just want to know you have enough information. That's all. So on this question here, let's put a minute and a half on the clock. Again, I think it's very similar to the divisibility question we did earlier. Minute and a half on the clock. Let's knock this out. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question. But before I do, I want to comment on a great question that I just got via chat, or probably a little bit ago. I'm getting to each of my chat comments in turn. And what I love about this question is I can understand, and I'm confident that there are plenty of others in these shoes. So here's what I'm going to say. If you're just one step away, the key is going to be homework. Like, being one step short in here, pretty good. Being on top of it, great, obviously. Being like 3 steps short, terrible. So you got to start to be honest. Is it really one step, or is it more like 3, 1 with an asterisk, 2 extra steps that I'm overlooking, so on and so forth? But also, it's also about, hey, I thought I did well. You don't need to think you did well. You take the quiz that's online for the skill builder, and if you get 100 on that quiz, you get it perfect, you did well. I'm happy with that. But if it's more like, oh, I didn't really take the quiz, or oh, I kind of did half of it on the subway on my way to work, or oh, I took the quiz, I got like an 80 on it, which is pretty good. I took the quiz 4 times though. It's like, what? You didn't do well. You want to do well. Take the time to do it right. Because I'll tell you right now, they will all come back and bite you in the ass later. It's just a matter of time. And so, to me, the key is crushing the skill builder so that everything I say makes sense in here. Like, I was private chatting with one of you just now who's had a rough day, and I asked, hey, like, are you at least getting some good takeaways? He's like, dude, I'm getting tons of takeaways, which is solid. Because I can tell you right now, I am positive there are people who did not do the skill builder, let alone crush it, that right now I'm saying things that are going right over their head, and they're like, what the hell? This class is a waste. I ain't learning shit. And it's like, I know, I get it. But that starts to be now on you, not on me anymore, because I'm going to assume a baseline level of where you're already at, and then we're going to hit the ground running from there. So to me, that's what you want to make sure. Now, let's say I did crush a skill builder, but I'm falling short in here. It may be because you're missing 1 or 2 little things, and that cementing it through homework will help. But sometimes it's just arrogance. Like, don't you know who I am? Like, I don't need to respect this process. Right answers jump out at me on every single question. I know the test maker disagrees because I keep getting them wrong, but I know this next one's going to be different. Well, that's your attitude. There's nothing a bunch of homework's going to help you change. Like, that requires a fundamental paradigm shift, as they say, up here. And again, that's why I try to make sure you understand that earlier in the process. I don't think... Actually, maybe later today there will be a drop the course answer, meaning, in my opinion, you pick this answer, you should just drop the course. Like, let me save you some money, not only on the GMAT and the GMAT prep, let me save you money on your MBA. Like, the MBA is going to cost a lot of money. Like, at the rate you're going, with the respect you're bringing, maybe that's not in the cards for you. Again, these are truths no one wants to hear, but I'm not afraid to share them because it's my job. I want to make sure you are realistic about what it is you want. Because like I said on Monday, I was hella fired up when 97% of you said I want a 7 something. Is that going to be a reality in here? Zero chance of that. But I would love for us to die trying to get there. But if that's not what we're willing to do, we're willing to half-ass it, or we're just expecting it to come out of thin air, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people in here, and I want to be clear about that from the get-go. Again, I'm not here to hold your hand and tell you how great you are and sing Kumbaya by the campfire. Like, there are other classes that'll do that for you. But what I am here to do is create GMAT champions, which is why I say, hey, look, man, things are going to run the way they're going to run, and we're going to get there when we get there. But if that's not what's in the mindset, like an open accountability and honesty in the process, like, hey, there's other stuff you should be doing. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at this question here. It says, if x is an integer, is x over 2 an even integer? Meaning, is x over 2 an even integer? Notice the way I'm translating that. I always want to write what I read as I read. That's an equation. Even integer is a multiple of 2. I wrote x over 2 is a multiple of 2. That's the question. Now notice though, I do not run right into statement 1 and 2. It's kind of like what I started saying to you even yesterday. Only the idiots want to spend their time down here, or in critical reasoning down here. 99ers, we spend our time up there. We take our time, we massage it a little bit. We start to think, what else could they be asking us? What would we love to see? So for me, when I see that, I can't but help myself to rewrite this one more time as just simply being, hey, is x essentially a multiple of 2 2's? or is x a multiple of 4? And so when I look at this question here, it's like, what? I don't even have to bother translating this in a sense. Like, I'm jumping at first glance all over statement number 2, getting it down to 50-50 within seconds. And then, of course, now I just look back at statement number 1. I'm like, wait, you're telling me it's a multiple of 2, just one 2. I want to know if there's 2 2s in there. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. No way, no how is that sufficient. And I'm done with this question. Notice there's like this much math on the board. And it's because there's a deep understanding of it. It's not because I'm going to brute force my way, and I'm sure as hell not going to start picking some random numbers out of the sky. There's no efficiency to that process. And so as you're going through these questions, you're not acutely aware of that judge who's trying to hand out those style points, you're probably not getting any. And if you ain't getting any, it ain't good for many reasons. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this next question here. Now notice what this question is. It's under the section of positive, negative number properties. Now as you go through this journey, you want to be trying to find what I will say are clues, again, from the test maker. And for me, you're never going to see on the test this. Like, that itself makes this question 1,000 times easier if I'm on the other side of this camera. So what am I supposed to pay attention to? What is my trigger that tells me that's what you're really testing me on? That. An inequality with a 0 is just a signs-based question. And acknowledging that tells me that, oh, that's the tool I need to be using. So like, you know, as an example, not to get too crazy, but like if I saw maybe a screw and I got to do some project or something, and I see that's what's on the top of the screw, the head of the screw. Yeah, I know I need a screwdriver, but that's a clue that tells me what effing screwdriver I need. It ain't going to do me any good to bring a hammer, first of all, then I'm an idiot. But even if I walk up with the wrong screwdriver, that isn't helpful either. So you're always constantly assessing the clues that you're given in a question that tells you then what strategies you need to be busting out. And we saw a little of this on Monday with, like, say, for example, sentence correction. But I want us to connect all those dots, even in the world of quant. So right now, I say, sweet, you're just testing me on signs. Because I could start to do this a long way. I could start to sit here and try to solve for X, solve for Y, so on and so forth, but that isn't a good way to go. I've got to be better than that. So question for you. The question's asking, is X greater than 0? Notice that statement 1 says XY is 16. Statement 2 says X plus Y is 10. What is it telling me about statement 1 here in terms of their signs? What information should I be able to gather about X and Y signs in statement number 1? What do you think here? Yeah, exactly. They are the same sign. Absolutely right. You know they're either both positive or both negative. That's the way it works. With that in mind, you know statement 1 is definitely not sufficient. A and D get knocked out pretty quickly. I should have known that statement 1 gets knocked out pretty quickly. Because why? In this case, there's a Y in the mix. I don't have to even worry about it. Very important to realize that. Now take a look at statement number 2 here. It says X plus Y equals 10. And yeah, no, Domingo, they don't have to be, be careful, George, it can't be 0, and Domingo, no, they definitely don't have to be different. Don't assume anything. So on the side there, with the X plus Y equals 10, you want to make sure you recognize that, hey, look, I know the signs could be positive. One could be positive, one could be negative, one could be negative, one could be positive. I might even be tempted to say they could both be negative. But if they add up to a positive, that's really a non-starter. It's impossible. But again, notice you still have some variation on x there. It could be positive, it could be negative. So even statement 2 gets knocked out, as it should, because what the F? You got a y in there. How the hell are you going to figure out x? So to me, when you do a question like this, you have 2 seconds on the clock, you are immediately at C or E, and you're not even dicking around with any of this analysis. If you have more than 2 seconds, then you dick around with said analysis. Important you realize that. Now notice also, pro tip style here, how I'm capturing my signs. I'm just throwing them right underneath the variables. Because if I throw them right underneath the variables, it allows me to keep track of them. Again, I'm not screwing up and tripping over my own feet there. And so now it's time for me to start to finish it out. I got to combine the information that I have. Notice what it tells me in statement 1. The signs are the same, as you said. In statement 2, these are the 3 potential options. Well, if both have to be true, this is the only thing that overlaps, which means x is positive, y is positive. Do I know what x is? I don't give 2 shits what x is. All I know is I can answer the question being asked. The answer is hell yes. It doesn't matter if it's hell yes or hell no, but I can answer it. I'm done with this question. Again, I'm not doing much math. I'm just understanding it. Excuse me. Now, what if I were one of these engineer types and I wanted to sit here and solve? First of all, it's not 2 equations, 2 variables, it's a quadratic. And I could factor it, and I could get the values for x, and I would get the right answer, and I'd look at the back of the book, I'd see the solution, they'd tell me what the values for x are, and of course they're both positive, so I'm good. And I'll think I did it right, and I did it in less than 2 minutes. F 2 minutes. This is a freaking 27-second question. Hit it, move on to the next one. And that's what you want to be thinking about. All right, so let's wrap up the number properties here, folks. I want to get into ratios next. Ratios are an important part of this test. You've got to understand ratios. Obviously, the skill builder walks you through the different ways of writing them. I'm a big believer in this stuff. Not so much a believer in this stuff. Hey, Mara, thank you for sharing. You know, like I said, man, this class it seems very freaking quiet today. I don't like it because, again, I feed off the energy in a room, and all I had were people that were raising blood pressure. But that's a great contribution because it's okay. That's the way it is, man or woman. But what I would say to you is now we start to unlearn it. Because once we start to unlearn it, we start to realize, like, hey, this ain't so bad. I already have a leg up. I know how to do it. I just got to hit the damn brakes, and I'll be out of it. Exactly. That's why I said, woman. All right. With that, let's go ahead and get into this section here. Now, this is a great question, because here you go. You want to have a reality check, folks? Here's a reality check for you. I do strongly believe there is a drop the course answer on this question. Like, you pick this answer, this isn't going to be a good journey. And again, I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but maybe less tongue, more cheek. I don't know. You have to start to be real. Like, if right now nothing in your profile says I'm a 99er, or at least a 700 something. Because remember, a 700 something on this test means you're better than like 90 some percent of the population out there. 760 plus means 99% of the population out there. Test taking population, not 99% of the world. This is of the people taking the GMAT, you're better than 99 out of 100 of them. Like, if nothing in your profile tells you that you're that good, and the answer pops out at you within 2 seconds, there's a decent chance you're in the candidacy of I should be dropping the course. And again, this is a reality check of sorts. Respect this question. It is not a tough question, but it is one where, hey, you know what? You can do this if you just pay attention. So with that, let's put a minute 30 on the clock. I don't think you need that much time, but let's give it so you can respect it. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So I want to address the question that I have on the message board real quickly, because I think it's a great question. It's a great question because I think the answer is maybe. Classic lawyer answer. I know we've got a few lawyers up in here. I got a chance to read those introductions, and it's like, you know, classic lawyer answer is maybe or it depends. And so that's what I'm going to say to you. Maybe, it depends. Remember, practice does not make perfect. I cannot stress that enough. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. And so, exactly. And so the one thing that I would say is, some people have a tough time with the timer, and I get that. Let me be clear though, the timer in here is an artificial construct. So it's a little bit of a bullshit construct if you think about it. There is no one on the test that's going to be like 2 minutes up, 1 minute 30 up, 1 minute up, 2.5 minutes up, move on, guess. No one's going to do that. Shit, if you wanted to, you could spend 62 minutes on question 1 of the quant section. You could. You'd die if you did, but you could. So what I want you to start to get accustomed to in here is obviously the heat of the moment. There's some heat coming. I just want to use crushing things in here, but he's like, dude, I need a beer. This freaking timer's killing me. And it's like, hey, but you're getting good at it. So one thing is obviously paying attention to time and figuring out ways to become more efficient. The second reality is, F this timer. Like right now, if instead of a minute and a half, I needed a minute 45 to get the question right, and I got it right in a minute 30, I get it wrong in a minute 30, I'm not that worried. All I do know though is if I'm going to take 15 seconds more right now, I got to make those 15 seconds up elsewhere. And maybe when I see a trapezoid question, trapezoids are my thing, I got a trapezoid tattooed on my back, like, dude, that's where I'm at, fine. Maybe you make it up there. And so the one thing that I would say is, no, we don't even want to get there, Ivan. This is just an ugliness all around. So the one thing that I would say to you is just be understanding that in order to make the practice pay off, you need to have takeaways. There are things that tell you what it is that I would say you should have recognized, and therefore how you should have responded. That's the real important thing. All right, let me ask you this question here. As you look at this, what is the drop the course answer that almost 20% of you picked on this one? 20%. That's not good. I don't want 20% of you dropping the course right now. D for drop, Mr. Wolfson. I like it. Yeah. Hey, and one of you told me you were scared to answer the question, and you just told me, hey, D's for drop, so at least you saw that coming, and I'm happy to see that. And that's absolutely right. D is straight drop the course right now. D is like not good. Now, again, a little bit tongue-in-cheek right now, but think about this for a second. Forget the respect for the GMAT, forget the respect for the test maker. Fucking bring some respect for me here. I'm teaching your class. Why would I give you a minute and 30 seconds for you to tell me that 2/5 is 40%? This isn't my first time teaching. I know how to run the clock here. I would give you 2.5 seconds to tell me that's a 40%. The fact that I gave you a minute 27.5 extra tells you you need to do better. Maybe you can't do better. I don't know. But this is the moment where you got to start to face the mirror and ask yourself some of these tough questions. Question for you. One thing you're going to learn is that in word problems, words matter. What would you say is the most important wording in this question here? What should I have been able to pick up on, and it should have then made it a big deal? Yeah, so notice you guys are picking up on the volume bit. Absolutely, so damn important. But I do want to comment on Kirby's observation, Encore, George. Closest is really important too. And so to me, great Michaela, like closest, by the way, is a yell from the test maker. Exactly, Savian. It's a yell from the test maker saying, hey dude, I got your back right now. I know you're a lawyer. You don't need to do any math. Take it from me. I'll hook you up. That's what he's doing. And when he gives you that gift, you just open your arms and you say thank you and you run with it. And it's imperative that you do. Now, on this question, do I really want you approximating? Hell no. I'll give you the 99 or bust way to crack this code on this question instantly. But on other questions, I do want you to see that. But on this question, yeah, you needed to see this volume bit. Because if in your mind, you are just doing alcohol to water is 2 to 5. I get why you picked choice D. Again, it's a disrespectful answer. You know that this is by volume. There are 7 total parts. What you're really concerned with is what's 2 out of 7. That's all. Take a little bit more time on the setup. Stop gloating with your execution skills. You fucking are dropping the course. 20% of you. Not a good start, folks. And again, you know, some of you said this is not a kick in the ass, this is a kick in the face. Okay, I'll take that too, man. At least we learn. And so the one thing that I would say to you on this question here is, how do I figure out 2 to the 7? I'll tell you how a 99er does this, frankly. You have 1/2 to 1/10 memorized, meaning 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, which is 0.143. And then you double it to 286. And you come and you say, boom, there's my final answer. Like, I don't memorize 2/7. I got a small hard drive up top, folks. I know 1/7, and then I just manipulate as needed in the numerator. But let's say you're not there yet, and you have not memorized your common fraction decimal equivalents, which you got to do. Then yeah, you do piggyback off of that closest language. And you say, okay, well 2 out of 7 is somewhere between a 2 out of 6 and a 2 out of 8. 2 out of 6 is 1/3, so anything more than a third is out. 2/8 a quarter, anything less than a quarter is out. I guess choice B becomes final answer as a result. And so you can get there, but on a question like this, I have no tolerance for that. You gotta have this. But I do want people to pick up on that language for other questions. So now, let's go back to D here, because you see the carnage in the poll, it is very real. The E's and the C's and the A's, I don't really understand at all. Like that may terrify me. Actually, I don't know if that terrifies me more. The A's, C's, and E's, I feel like I could teach. The D's, I don't know if I can teach. You got to start to ask yourself why you're there right now in choice D. What about this question? What about this class? What about this test told you things are going to be just that easy? Because I'll tell you right now, to get to a 99, it's tough. It makes grown men cry. I've seen it myself in front of me. So I'm talking about big ass football player type grown men. So please make sure as you go through this journey, if you're sincere, again, people can all say what we want to do, but not really mean it, meaning it's just lip service. But if you're sincere about this, it's time to either adjust our approach or adjust our expectations, and it starts here today. Monday, like I said, is walk in the park. There's no reality check. Reality checks start to happen now. All right. This is take a look at this question later. This does nothing for me. I want to take a look at this next question. I think this is a good question. It's a good question. This is an opportunity for redemption for some. This is also an opportunity to double down on a drop. Be careful here. If you do not know the sucker answer, I'm not going to call it a drop the course answer because this is not as offensive to me. Like the last question, those of you in D, you're spitting in my face and I'm taking offense. This one's not as bad. I don't think there's as an offensive an answer, but there is a great trap answer. If you are not aware of it, you are in it. Or worse, you don't ever want to be in worse. At least be in the trap. Let's bring some respect. Let's put a minute and a half on the clock. Let's knock this out. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Here's the kicker on this question, and this is where you start to realize this test isn't tough, but this test is tough. I have 95% of you roughly able to do this question. 95% of you. Think about that for a second. That's unreal numbers. You know how many get this right? About 60% of you. Think about that. 95% of you know how to do this question, yet about only 60% get it right. It comes down to one effing thing, straight up respect or the lack thereof. So question, what is the sucker answer on this question? What is someone likely to pick because they get disrespectful? They want to go too fast. They don't want to focus on going too slow. Exactly, Ben. Where is some Admiral Akbar when you need him? Hey, Domingo, the mighty have fallen, man. But this is exactly how it happens, man. But I'll assume it was a typo in the poll. So the one thing that I will say as you go through this is you gotta do better. Again, what do you do on something like this? You're like, all right, 3, 4, 7. The one thing I would say is always figure out total parts. You know the grand total is 420. I would encourage you to figure out the multiplier is. So on this one, there's a 30x multiplier. Now, how do I know it's 30x? Because I know my 30 by 30 multiplication tables? Hell no. I know 3 times a 14 is a 42. Again, these numbers come up so damn frequently. And so then if I know that that's a 30x multiplier, all I gotta do is multiply one of these by 30. So which one? Clearly the 3, choice D, because my final answer. Now, is that a good move? What's the sucker answer gonna be? I don't know. Oh shit, I might be in it then. That's the only thing that you need to be thinking about. Because note the key word on this, slowest. Slowest ain't smallest. I know some of us thought it is, but it ain't. You have to remember the way this is set up. These are times. They are not speeds. Time and speed are inversely proportional. Time, the smaller the number, the bigger the speed number. I should have gone with this boy. Choice B, final answer as a result. And so to me, as you start to see to the Nicks and the Domingos and the rest of the crew, which is understandable, because like I said, hey, a full third of you almost are in the D world. These are the false negatives. Think about that for a second. Like, this ain't a minute and a half math, by the way, right? But I'm giving you time to read it, understand it, set it up, and execute. If choice D were not on the board, I am confident that 90-some% of you would have ended up in B. It's not like the D's would have gone to C or E or A, those island type responses, which by the way, like I said, if I'm in those islands, I get worried. I start saying, why is everyone on a different island? Or not clearly an island. Like it's like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. You know, it's like, why do I see the hurricane is coming my way? Why do I still wanna be here? You don't wanna be here, evacuate. All right, with that then, take a look at this. It says the ratio of kids aged 3, 4, and 5 at a kindergarten is 7, 11, 9 respectively. If the number of 3-year-olds increases by 7, but the number of 4 and 5-year-olds stays the same, the new ratio will be blah, blah, blah. So in this case, I got my 3-year-olds, I got my 4-year-olds, I got my 5-year-olds, 7, 11, 9. I'm increasing the number of 3 by 7. These don't change. What is the sucker move here? Meaning, what is someone who gets this far and is like, okay, I think they give me a 760 just for taking a Veritas course. This guy's 99 or bust. Don't they give me a 99 just because I went through the motion? I gave him a credit card. Yes, excellent. So now you're starting to get a sense now of like, hey, that's what this is about. It's like, think about that level of math, like that's taking place on this. Ooh, you know how to add 7 plus 7? You get to a B? Like, where is the respect? Like, what do you think the sucker answer is going to be? This guy? Shit, that guy hasn't done anything except double the numbers. Which means the numbers still stay the same. It's like, it doesn't make any sense at all. So you have to be asking yourself, well, what's the catch here? Well, if I crush the skill builder, I know that I can't just start adding and subtracting absolute numbers. The skill builder teaches me that. This isn't a complicated question. If there were 700 kids, 1,100 kids, 900 kids, notice the ratio barely changes. It's basically 7. It's 7.07 to 11 to 9. So no way can this be done. But they look to nail people. This is a weeding out process. We all have different schools we want to apply to, but I always constantly reference HBS, the gold standard of sorts. We all can't go to HBS. They don't got enough seats there. And as a result, the GMAT's job is to weed us all out. Otherwise, HBS would be overwhelmed with applications. This is what they do, folks. That last question with all those D's on the damn board, that's what they do. And the sooner I can start to acknowledge that's what they do, the better I can respond. Look at this guy. Similar fact pattern. It says the ratio of kids age 3, 4, and 5 at a kindergarten is 7, 11, 9, respectively, if the number of 3-year-olds doubles, but the number of 4 and 5-year-olds stays the same, the new ratio will be. So at that point, notice there's no more addition taking place. This is a doubling it. So if I'm doubling it, of course a 14, 11, 9 makes sense. Because if it were 700, 1100, 900, like massive online kindergarten, I'd be at 1400, 1100, 900, or really 14, 11, 9. So yeah, that's a for sure no-brainer. All right, with that then, I want to get into this last section, which is all about percentages, folks. Percentages are, again, an important part of this test. They really are just decimal based. So if they're decimal based, you can go fraction based pretty quickly as well. There are some basic sort of calculational issues we want to talk about, and then we'll take a look at a couple questions here. So starting off with the first one, what is 15% of 66? Now I could do brute force math on this. Hell, I can even approximate if I want. Because remember, 15% means 15 per cent. Cent is Latin for 100. Of typically means multiply 66. So I could be like, oh, I can just move the 100 over to this side. And 66 over 100 is basically 2/3. But basically is the key word. The reality is it's slightly less than 2/3. And then of course 3 goes into 15 5 times. So I'm left with slightly less than 10. I could do that. But what if I get 9.8, 9.9, 9.7? What am I going to do? Shit my pants and start to do some long multiplication, long division? I don't want to do that because that's for losers. So then I have to start to think about what we learned at the beginning of the lesson, which is, hey, there are no numbers by accident. Use multiples of 10 to help you. A 15 is just a 10 and a 5. A 10 is a 6.6. That's easy stuff. Half of that is a 3.3. Add them up, you're at a 9.9 within seconds. So you want to start to focus mentally doing some of this stuff. Same thing on this bottom one. What is 12% of 150? Now this has multiple ways you could do it. If you know 12 and 15 is 180, you can bring the zeros back, divide the zeros because you know your multiplication tables, that's great. But if not, you still are doing the same exact kind of conceptual stuff. It's like, oh yeah, 10% is a 15. 2% is a fifth of that, so 3, 15 plus 3 is 18, final answer. 75 increased by 20%. Well, what's 10%? 75, double that, you're at 15. 75 plus 15, 90. Push yourself to do mental math, folks. Megan gave you guys a great resource, a recommendation earlier. Do not be one of these types of people that says, oh yeah, you know, I can't do mental math. I make a lot of mistakes. And as a result, I got to do everything longhand. Okay. Then 6, 7, 8 weeks later, it's like, hey, you know, all this longhand math is taking me too long. You have any good recommendations to stop doing longhand math? And it's like, not really. Get a freaking time machine. Go back 6 weeks. Remember when Megan and I are like, hey, you guys start doing mental math? Try doing that again. That's it. Because if all you're doing is reinforcing bad habits, you want to start to recognize it's going to be tough to break. No, they don't, Jared, nor do any of your comments or questions, nor any of my comments or questions as well. So no, everything is, you see it once and that's all. One time, one shot kind of gig. But for the purposes of being in class, I think you can do like a copy and paste for the day when you're in it. But just another reason not to be freaking skipping classes. Again, it's so easy, by the way. Oh, these things are all recorded. Oh, I'll just skip a class. People do that all the damn time. Like again, by the time we're at like the 4th, 5th, 6th week, dude, class starts to be like half of what it was. Because people start out with great intentions and then they just start mailing it in. Don't do it, guys. This is the time to crush the test. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this question here. I think this is a great question. This question right here is one where it can be tough if you don't want to slow down so that you can speed up. Meaning if you look at this and you're like, oh dude, it's time to go, timer's on, let me do my thing, you're probably going to get it wrong. This is a tough question. But it's only tough because, like I already described, people just don't want to take their time on it and do it right. Because the math that's required on this question is actually very easy. It's the setup that's the single most important, difficult part of this question. So as a result, try focusing your attention there. And so, to that point earlier when, someone asked that question, it's like, hey, look, part of this journey is about practicing the right way. And that starts even in here. Forget homework. If I'm going to just brute force my way through a class and then all of a sudden I get to the homework thinking that's going to be the saving grace, it ain't. It's just going to give me more opportunities to continue brute forcing. So next thing I know, I'm on test day and I finish like half the questions. Well, that's not good. So with that then, let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. I hate to say it, but a pretty sad performance on this question. But I want to comment on what I just dubbed the quote of the day. It came from one of you who, let's just say, had a less than stellar performance on a question, so I kind of wanted to peek in and pop my nose maybe where it didn't belong. But like I said, the more I know about you, the more invested I can be, and if I'm on the other side of this camera, I want me all up in my business. And what I love about this student is the accountability that's there. First of all, there's the lack of sensitivity, right? As my email welcoming me to the course said, hey, there will be people that will be offended by my words. If you're offended by my words, it's probably because you have an inflated sense of your abilities, and I can't worry about that. I just don't. Like our good friend Arpine, he saw his way out very quickly. The thing, or I should say I booted his way out very quickly, either way. The one thing that I would say to you guys as you go through this is, if you're the type, like I said, who doesn't want to see ugly when ugly is there, this won't be a good journey for you. You have to be open. Someone just quoted, sent me a quote. I love this line. I probably should have copied and pasted this in the main chat. It's like, man, I felt like shit on that one. I don't want to feel like that again. And it's like, that's exactly right. You want to have these motivators, and that own internal feeling of disgust with his performance was phenomenal to me, because that starts to be way beyond my pay grade at this point, Brent. I don't even know who the hell Dunning or Kruger is, but I will assume it's maybe a good thing or a bad thing. I'm an idiot, remember that. So the one thing that I would say to you as you go through this process is, hey, look, if I'm open to the fact that I may not be at the top of my game, but I'm willing to put in the time and effort to do it right, there's absolutely zero reason I can't crush this test. The only time when it doesn't happen is when I'm not willing to put in the time and effort to do it right. I might be willing to put in the time to do it wrong. How the hell is that going to work? Or I might be able to put in the effort, but not the time. How's that going to work? You got to put in both. And that starts to be on your end of the spectrum. All right, with that then, let's get into this question here. Like I said, I think the setup is the most important thing, nothing else. If you do the setup right, this is an easy question. If you don't, I can see why 80% of you got this wrong. Think about that for a second. Notice what's involved in this question. There's a discount, there's a price, there's a profit, and there's a cost. What's the relationship of those things? I don't know. It wasn't in the skill builder. Hey, sorry to inform you, everything you need to know in life is not going to be in a skill builder. But you have common sense. You have the ability to reason out these relationships. And thus, I would say, come up with your own hypothetical dumbed down example. Like me, I got a friend who owns a store. I think to myself, well, when I go in, he's got a price that's on the merchandise. I never have to pay full price. He gives me a little deal. That's what comes out of my pocket and into his hands. And at that point, what does that pay for? It obviously pays for his merchandise, plus he gets a little bit extra to buy diapers for his kids. That's it, nothing else. Oh man, Ben, I love it. That's quote of the day too, man. Hey, but here's the one thing that I would say. See, this is good. Look, guys, there is no reason to be in a silo. I'm telling you, whatever feelings you're having, one of I'm crushing it. There are others that are thinking they're crushing it. Retweet. See, this is where we're letting our guard down, guys. This class, fucking for the first 2 hours and 53 minutes, I felt like, is there even a pulse in here? Like, are we all slitting our wrists? Are we halfway in a bathtub with a blender and a toaster ready to like call it a life? Like, no, dude, it's okay. But we got to make sure that, no, don't say that, Mackenzie. So the one thing that I would say is, but we have to just learn. That's the one thing I'd say. Bella's focusing on priorities right now. So either way, we'll get through it, but we got to do better on some of these things. That's all I want to be clear about. So either way, once we get this far, we'll kind of Mara's hitting the hard-hitting questions, and not the medicinal kind. Or maybe it's the medicinal kind soon, I don't know. So here's the one thing that I would say as you look at this. With this relationship, which is the best relationship out there, in my opinion, because it's, hey, I've got, the left side balancing the right, I can start to put in everything I need now into the equation. So you're giving me a 25% discount, that means it's P minus 1/4 P. You're giving me a 25% profit, that means cost plus 1/4 C. I like to use variables that mean something. That means this is just 3/4 P, this is 5/4 C, and now I'm ready to keep the process moving. Then it goes, what price? So now you're telling me to solve for price. So if I solve for price, that's just really 5/4 C times 4/3, 4's cancel. And then it says, should a merchant mark an item if it cost him $16.80? So really the cost is $16.80. I will get rid of the C, and I'll pop a $16.80 right there. And that's it. I have to now solve P equals 5/3 1680. Notice I'm not doing any other type of math in the process. Why? I suck at math. I think I told you that once before. The idea there is, as a result, the more math I do, the more mistakes I'm going to make. So what I try to do is procrastinate to calculate. I say, hey man, instead of doing math here, 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 and here, and then getting the question wrong, so where do I have to double check here, 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 and here, I just push all that shit off to the very end, to this step. Because this math I can't F up. If I F that up, I shouldn't be taking this class. But once I get to this step, if I F this up, and I will, then at least that's where I got to troubleshoot. But again, now that we're here, think about what I said. There's no numbers by accident. It's not a coincidence that 1680 is a multiple of 3. They're making your life easy every chance they get. So 3 goes into 16 5 times, carry the 1, and you're at 560. So 5 times 560, use the multiplication shortcuts from earlier. 5 times 5, 25 bucks. 5 times 6, $3. Or 300, you know, whatever way you want to look at it. Add them up, 28. Final answer. But notice how many people decided, nah, F this. F you and your setup. I just want to do a lot of other math. You know, I want to start slamming 25 against 1680, start adding things, subtracting things, dividing things. Multiplier things. Dude, Ben, you're hilarious. I love you, Ben. Don't change, man. See, this is good. Blood pressure coming back down as we end the night. But, you know, the one thing that I would say, and Elena, that's okay, right? Because this is the way people roll. The one thing that I do want you to understand, though, is there's a quicker, cleaner way. And that's the one thing I would say to you guys. But dude, you guys are funny. All right, let's take a look at this question here. I don't think no pulse. I don't think in this case we we can handle another drop the course answer right now, so I will not turn this into a drop the course question. We will crowdsource this one. That way nobody goes off on a low note. But let's look at this question here, and I want to hear what you have to say. It says, at the peak of the real estate market, an investor bought a parcel of land. In the year that immediately followed, the value of that land decreased by 20%. By what percentage will the land need to appreciate for the investor to break even? So, you guys are funny. So question, what would you say is the classic drop the course answer right here, right now? Like, you look at this and you say, only someone who is so disrespectful, who really wants to end their misery right here, right now, would pick this answer. Yes. See, now we're on fire. See, you guys fucking know this. And even if I gave you guys time, some of you would still try to pick it. There you go, Benjamin. That's what it's all about. You know this is a scam. Now, hey, so let me respond on Karen's tip. Here's the best part. It doesn't even matter. You just don't pick this, and you're already... Oh, there we go, Domingo. 3 hours later, you're on my good list again. And that's all I ask for you guys. Like, if I know this feels too easy, it's probably gonna be a sucker. I'm probably gonna feel like an idiot later. I gave you guys that clip on, I think, on Monday, which was phenomenal, from The Office, you know, with Dwight Schrute. It's like, dude, just don't do it. And so if nothing else, I'd pick A, I'd pick C, I'd pick D, I'd pick E. But let's put this on pause for a second. You can actually start to eliminate even choice A real quickly out of the mix if you think about it either conceptually or you've actually lost some money in an investment before. Because think about what you got. Like, let's say you got this pot of money and it's gotten smaller. Well, for me to get back to this, I need a much bigger chunk of this to get back to here. So if nothing else, I put my head down, I pray to the almighty GMAT gods, and I say, give me one answer greater than 25%, and I'm done with this question. The idiot in the cubicle next to me, he's sitting there figuring out the number, not me, because I'm a 99er. I know answers are assets. And the fact that this ain't a short answer, but instead multiple choice, I'm gonna rip this thing up. And it's like, damn, he gave me 1 and 3 on this. Okay, I can still do this though. Now, let's rewind. I could do this algebraically if I want. Algebra is such an important lesson. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But I have to be flexible. And even though I shit on number picking so often, I will tell you there's times and places for it. And when it comes to percent-based questions, number picking is a beautiful approach. And 99ers, we are flexible. We don't walk around with just one damn screwdriver on the job. So question for you. If I wanted to number pick on this, what would be a good value for the initial market value of said property before Ben walked off with all our cash? Yeah, exactly. 100 is beautiful here. And that's because 100 makes percentage calculations so simple, so easy to work with. And now, of course, if you're telling me that it dropped by 20 to 80 and I got to go back up to 100, well, what's 20 on 80? Just a quarter here. Choice C, final answer. And so what you start to find is that, yeah, I could do it with V for value and then multiply it by 4/5, so then I got to multiply that by 5/4 to get there, so on and so forth. Too much work, too much effort. There's no style involved. And I don't want to say there's style over substance, because you need substance on this test, but man, you also want style. Make sure you realize that. All right, so we all survived, no one dropping on the choice B tip. And if secretly you wanted to pick B, don't worry, you didn't officially pick a drop the course answer. All right, so let's rewind back on this, because I really want to hammer this home, because I think some of you see it, but I love seeing it in print. It says, arithmetic may sound basic, but for most test takers, it really represents a new way of thinking about math. Like, this ain't just math, folks. This is like GMAT math, which is different. And so you really have to start to understand things from all the different angles, not just one where you're brute forcing things. So make sure you realize that. You know, they have this great line that says, if the math looks too labor intensive, it probably is. My lawyer ass says, hey, if you're doing it long, you're doing it wrong. Again, you want to be aware of these types of things. Hey, I think Sabian will tell you that's probably not a good move. He's trying to exit his way out. But with that out of the way, that's a great line. I want to end on that note here. Never too late. JDMBA, baby, all day long. So here's what I will say to you guys. We are done with today's lesson. Arithmetic. And by the way, this is our first lesson of substance in here. It was a little bit of an ass kicker for some, and I get that. Use this as proper motivation for next week, guys. I cannot stress this enough. Come to class next week super prepared for algebra. So what does that mean? That means, nice, Ashwin. So here's what that means. If you come to class next week, again, not doing the skill builder, or not crushing the skill builder, or not taking advantage of the office hours in between, because you know what, I had questions on my skill builder that I didn't understand. Don't fucking just ignore them. Come to class having clarified them. Again, I want you to be able to teach everybody else how to do body slam. I want you guys to have such mastery of the basic material so when we come to class, we can have good discussions. We can start to see not only the efficiency in how to tackle them, but also bring more respect. A lot of you didn't bring respect today, and you know that for yourselves. Hopefully this was an eye-opening experience. And by the way, this is why I want all of you to take a practice test. Too many of you are still in denial. Too many of you have not even freaking tried a practice test. You're like, what's it going to tell me? It's going to tell me I'm not so good. I know it'll tell you that, but that's not why I want you to take it. I want you to take it so you know how bad you really are. Because I think some of us are delusional. I think some of us feel like, oh yeah, dude, I want a 760 because, you know, Harvard's like, you know, average is 730. I got to be better, so I want a 760. You take a practice test right now and you realize you're at a 500, you realize how much effort you need to put forth. But whereas some of you think, again, delusionally, oh, I want a 760. I'm probably like at a 700 right now because I'm really that good. Oh man, we're quickly turning into after hours, after dark, Richard. You're hilarious. So the one thing that I would say is exactly, Ben, things make things so damn clear. So that's all I want to make sure you understand. All right, on that note, what's in store for us next week before this goes off the rails? Monday's lesson is critical reasoning. It is easily the single most important verbal lesson of the entire class, folks. Hilarious, Karen. It's easily the single most important verbal lesson of the entire course. Please make sure you prep accordingly for it. The preparation, in my opinion, is obviously a pretty minimal skill builder, but more importantly, it is the Foundations of Logic chapter. Make sure you put in the time and effort on that. Wednesday's lesson is algebra. It is, in my opinion, a close second, if not tied with arithmetic, for first in terms of importance in this course. Again, too many of you are going to be worried about all the stuff that comes later. Oh, get me into those word problems. Oh, work rate. Oh, get me into those mixtures. Or actually, you know what? Get me into combinatorics. Get me into geo. F all that. If you cannot crush arithmetic and algebra, all that stuff is a waste of your damn time. That's the reality. So you want to put in the time and effort to crush algebra as well. Now, some of you are getting a sense of, hey, it's been too long. I thought I'd be able to pick this up like riding a bike. And it's like all I keep doing is crashing into the bushes and I keep forgetting my helmet and I keep ending up in the ER. That's okay too, but you need to now plan accordingly. So today is Wednesday night. The next significant skill builder is not due till the next Wednesday. You have a full week now. Maybe all of a I know, seriously. Maybe your weekend is not going to be as fun and filled with brunch and lunch and all these, and club night and all this. Maybe that ain't happening anymore. But this is a very important part of your guys' process that you guys need to be very motivated about translating, because we came in with some high as F expectations on Monday, which I love. We now need to start to deliver. That's all I'm going to say. All right, I'm done. Sorry for running class so damn late, but we were pretty much on time. Appreciate your guys' participation. Appreciate you guys waking the F up towards the end. Dude, if class starts out like this way again next week, I'm going to kill myself. I cannot handle this. Michael. So bring some humor, bring some fucking engagement and participation, and follow the basic rules. We kicked one idiot out, thankfully. No one else come back on Monday the same way. Appreciate it all, guys. I really do. Have a good rest of the night. Enjoy the rest of your guys' week, and I will see you guys all on Monday at the same time as usual. Thank you, everybody.